adventures. Pack up your swag, let's go. All Aussie adventures. All Aussie adventures. Time to hit the road.
Hello, and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Doof Network, where we reflect on Wildbow's most venison-packed, antler-racked, bullet-impacted, title-hacked, character-jacked, pain-racked, ransacked, foundation-cracked, contract enacted, least compact, fact-backed, second act, after-packed, huzzah! Work as it releases. I am Elliot Diebold.
I came in late. I'm Reuben Morehouse, though. I came in late because I was distracted by how wrong that intro sounded. But, you know, whatever. That's life.
Reuben, that is not what is written here in the notes for you to read.
It says, wow, Elliot, now that I've heard this arc's intro done right, I understand that I was so wrong and you are so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reuben's own words, everyone, through viceVersailes. Welcome. It's a reflecting episode. We've brought, what's the all Aussie edition, so brought back two previous Aussie guests. We've got viceVersailes and a bird. Welcome.
Hi.
Oh,
should we read what we've written?
Yeah, introduce yourself, folks. And because this is the all Australian edition, you have to use your most Ocker accents.
Oh, of course. I'll try and activate it then. Kennet down under. I'm viceVersailes. I'm a moderator and fanfic writer on Occult Magic Online's Reddit and Discord.
Hang on, I've got to try that audio cue. Kennet down under. And I'm a bird, and I mostly just live here. I've been an Universe reader since the first chapter of Pact.
Mm-hmm. Flawless.
I think that worked pretty well.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
It's true.
So yeah, well, we're going to talk about Hard Pass. I guess let's start with the traditional recap of everything that happened during the arc. The Avery's Dead arc, it's also known as, I guess.
Yeah, real shame that Avery's dead, huh?
Yeah, well, she's not...
She got better.
Yeah.
I'm really glad she got better.
Yes. Thanks, Snowdrop. But we'll get to that later. The arc starts with Verona working with Avery to close the net around Kennet, recruiting Turtle Queen to help, and then using the power of hate baths to summon Faye to fuck around. And then she has a bunch of Aurum candidates show up, including a creepy toy maker who was great, and I hope we get a chance to see again. And Freeman, and she decides who she wants to help.
Yeah, and then 22.2 kind of picks up, not even right from there. We go back a bit first. We see Verona and her new BFF, the Turtle Queen, kind of smuggle themselves past Kennet's boundary and past the girl by candlelight, who is even more pitiable than ever. She catches up with Lucy at the sword moot. Killwagon is there, arguing that his wagon is a home, but not really getting anywhere. Verona tells Lucy about how she chose Freeman as the Aurum candidate, and she thinks that it'll probably go well. Then Lucy wraps up the moot because everyone's getting tired, and she finishes it off by instilling punishments for basically doing bad faith gainsaying claims. So the duo, the Kennet duo, then take quick trips home. They sort of catch up with their friends and family, A tier though they may be, and then they sync up the next day for their sort of new daily stand-up. Freeman did not go well. He's dead now. Avery is
dead.
Maybe dead.
Obliterated. Reduced to atoms.
Avery is MIA, and Verona starts having bad thoughts about what could have happened to her, and Lucy just sort of talks her out of it and says, no, we are not allowed to think like that. It will all be fine.
After which, an exhausted Lucy finds herself in a hotel room with her mother, and they both lay out their feelings on their immediate future plans. Lucy asserts that she needs to keep up this fight, and Jasmine asserts that Lucy mustn't fight alone. Lucy immediately fails her task by battling the dreaded found shower controls by herself, and only barely escapes the culture shock with her life. But Avery helps out from beyond the grave via the friendliest parasitoid wasp this side of the constructions. Lesson learned. Lucy recruits the gunked up goblins to gather intel and figure out the game of Abyssal Claim Splatoon Mariska is playing. Then Lucy and Verona decide that if they have to play, they'll play hard.
And just quickly, I think that's the highlight of this chapter to me, is that trying to figure out the shower bit of 22.3. Well, it's a weird highlight to have in a chapter where Avery dies and then comes back to life, but I'm going to stand by it.
And it goes for a long time.
Yeah,
like
it's very thorough.
It was the found shower control stuff.
I'm still obsessed with the little detail, and it's not from the showers. It's when she tries to use the TV, and the TV channel changer has 4 directions: up, down, left, and right. So she goes down a channel, changes her mind, and goes back up, and the up takes her to a third channel. So it's not even the up and down are opposites on this fucking remote. And like Lucy gets extraordinarily mad about it, and I would too. Like while stuff is fun, but God, that would be frustrating.
It reminds me of those ghost dungeons that you get in some games where like you have to go through doors in a particular order, otherwise you get like randomized door. Oh, God, frustrating.
I'm thinking of it like you press down, you get sideways, you go up, you go far, you go left, you go back and to the left. It's completely different.
Yeah. I also this chapter, I don't know why, just a bunch of details stuck in my head. When Lucy meets all of the not glamoured up goblins, except for Cherry Pop, who didn't fall for it, and I just continue to love that Cherry Pop could not be convinced that this wasn't glamour because she was too stupid. Like it's just the perfect encapsulation of like why goblins can beat Fae sometimes. Like you can't manipulate her; she's too stupid to be manipulated.
The inveiglement doesn't fit in her head.
Yeah.
22.4 has Lucy going on a vengeance spree where she horrifies Harry, rats out Teddy to the cops, drives Adrian and Travis mad, thank goodness. But it was all a dream, which is a real shame. With the help of the hooligans of Half Street, L&V had deduced the Victorians were using alchemy to stay awake 23 hours a day. A few curses and a ritual circle see them tormented and given their final warning, warning number 407, only for Liz to appear as abyssal forces encroach.
Yes.
I do love that like the Kenneteers and Charles are kind of both stuck in a loop of telling the other side, no, I mean business this time for realsies, guys.
And also, I feel like it was all a dream is a great defense for some things, but like going capital M mad, I feel like that's the thing that would be most likely to leak over from dreams. So it's a pretty ballsy play to do that twice.
I think that gets called out. I think they say as they're waking up that Adrian still feels like he's going a little bit crazy. Yeah, there's interesting moral arguments to be had about whether it's okay to temporarily torture someone, but just in a dream, so it can kind of get undone.
In Alpina's interlude, there's talk of Memnes and Rems, and how they connect body and dream. And by the sound of it, the recurring meme of going insane because an abyssal psychopath told you to is iconic enough to actually already exist and have been happening enough that the kids were worried about it. So I think it's quite reasonable that Adrian might still be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the last in a long series of them trying to, with gently escalating stakes, get the negatives to back down. So I don't feel too bad about it.
The number of people in the Discord, in the live feed, just going, yes, finally! Oh, we're so glad!
I know, I'm so happy.
I'm so glad to see these kids being tortured. Now that's what I come to Pale for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do think it was kind of a fun trick Wildbow played on the audience, because I think a lot of us got caught out by seeing Lucy horrify Harry, and I was definitely in the camp of people who was like, oh, I like this. And then we find out it was a dream, and it was like, yeah, it didn't feel like something Lucy would do, and now I have to feel like a bad person for kind of being on board with it.
No, you don't have to feel like a bad person. The bloody Kennetiers get tortured and tormented so much. Can't you torture the other side's kids for once? That's what I say.
Because that's what this world needs is more kid torture.
For that's too what the long, sword mode agreed on. Yeah.
Grayson was right. These kids are being mollycoddled. Enough is enough.
Liz is here, and the girls kind of put their case to her, which is get on board or get fucked, basically. Standing to the side and having a kind of casual and cool neutrality is not good enough. But Liz refuses, and so the war is going to continue to escalate. Of course, the next big escalation is the world's hottest cat. Let me say that again. The world's sexiest cat, Blankshanks, who helps mess with Cameron as the scrapping continues.
And Reuben, I didn't get to say it in the episode. Obviously, we did a discussion question where you did say that Puss in Boots and Kitty Soft Paws were the hottest animals. So I assume that was a genuine compliment for Blank Shakes, because he's the same thing, isn't he?
What do you mean, like
just a sexy
Zorro cat? Oh yeah, sure, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's canonical. Didn't you hear, Gillette?
Yeah, that's a hot cat. I don't know what you want me to say.
No, I think that about covers it. Then we hit the first interlude of the arc, 22.A. It opens on a young Helen Deany breaking free of a totally impossible cage that she gets trapped in, and there's just no way she could get out of it. But she does, and she gets some pretty cool superpowers for doing so. She's now kind of free of all limits except those still imposed by her family of fellow monsters. So she goes to the Blue Heron and manages to get forsworn because her family tells her to, which actually really upsets her emotionally because she betrayed like her only genuine friend. And then also it fucks her up spiritually because she gets forsworn. Luckily, Satan Claus comes along and offers her a job. And she really nails the job interview because she tells him, "You don't want to hire me. I'm going to be too much of a violent psycho." And Charles says, "Yes, please," to that. So then we finally cut to the present where Helen and her many limbs have kind of split up, and she's taking the Blue Heron while also helping the Oakhams get kick-started on those renovations they've been talking about doing for a while, I hope. Also, Rook is there for a little bit.
Just a little.
Rook has a position.
She sure is holding a position and voicing her definitely fully real and entirely factored concerns.
Yeah, the one thing, we definitely come out of this with the impression that Rook knows Helen's big secret, which is very nice. Because that's bad for Helen, which equates to good.
Isn't it funny that the characters that you're most sure are definitely deceiving you are also the ones that seem to be like very clear, like I am definitely not lying right now? And
yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, Helen, this was the part of her interlude that I really enjoyed, is the whole time Rook's there, Helen is just internally going, I do not trust a fucking word this woman says. Like, Rook keeps saying, like, I promise you, no traps, no tricks. This is what I'm saying. And Helen just internally responds to that with, don't fucking believe it. No way, no how. Don't trust you. And it was like, yes, 100%. Like, this is the thing I can agree with Helen on, is treating people in this world who come up to you and like, I promise, no tricks, no traps. This is the way to go. I'd be like, no, thank you.
What was his name with the book? He had the Turtle Queen.
Basil.
Yeah, Basil. Yeah, he was an idiot.
Yeah,
and Helen learned from his mistake.
I think there's something to say in this chapter, Rook appealing to pathos and saying that she now really truly hates what the girls have done to Miss by putting her in a box. A very big and spacious one that seems very clever and that she designed herself, but still boxing her in, which is something that Miss has articulated herself. But the thing that really hit my deception detector was that it was so coherent a complaint that it's almost as though she's dedicated her entire existence to being able to get out of boxes. It's almost like that's the thing that she hates most about the world, and so is most equipped to change. So I think that she is very, very reasonable in what she's saying, and is making a very genuine complaint. It's just one that she's in complete power to fix, which then leads me to, I think Rook is just trying to make Kennet itself last long enough that she can do something to Kennet Found and like fiddle with Miss herself, or like work on the foundlings like over a long period of time, to see if she can turn them toward her cause, because that is what she is most equipped to do.
That's a good point. And I think if we're looking at someone like Rook waiting for their moment to do something Kennet Found, I've been sitting here for a number of arcs now waiting for this whole Red Moon violence period in Kennet Found to become relevant, because that just seems like a Chekhov's gun that would be very fun to watch go off. So Rook Rook being one of the actors who, you know, puts a plan into motion when something like that kicks off would be very fun.
I'd also love to see just like a regular blood moon.
Oh yeah,
Like let's say they all survive this thing and everything settles down and Kennet Found is still a thing operating more or less like it is. Like, what does just like, oh yeah, the red moon before last, there was no invaders. Just like, what do you do?
Just a normal purge. Yeah.
How do they spend their Sunday purges? Like, what do they get up to?
I that would be a very funny epilogue. Like if most of the epilogues are kind of like about rebuilding and negotiating and like kind of with an air of peace. Like, you know, not everyone's happy holding hands, but like I would assume that an epilogue after like Charles and Mariska are defeated would hopefully have this air of like we're moving towards a better tomorrow. And then there's just the one epilogue chapter that's just in Kennet Found and the Purge, and somehow still does that vibe as well.
It's of Luna Hair going full like Monty Python murder rabbit.
Anyway, 22.6. Verona and Lucy desperately try to put out fires faster than Helen and company can light them, but oh no, they didn't quite protect Brett's house from burning down. Shame. Anyway.
But who could have predicted that?
I did, as a matter of fact.
So
not that I'm tooting my own horn or anything and preening here in my absolute majesty. After a few unsuccessful defenses, they then decide to go for the throat instead and switch to threatening the town. Liz does a runner and clears the way to the church.
Are we buckling up, or do we have something to say here? Okay.
No, I think just, you know, listeners at home, prepare yourselves for what I'm sure will be a very easy and approachable and accessible chapter summary coming up here.
Okay.
Are we because we're 2 chapters into the next arc. Are we acknowledging that?
I have not read 23.a, so I'm not acknowledging it in the sense that I haven't read it.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely not spoiling it, but the arc title.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's quite common for these episodes to happen after 1 or 2 of the other chapters have come out, so yeah.
I really appreciate that Go for the Throat opens up on 23.1 Snowdrop, the replacement Kennet.
Because it really jumped out at me that it literally used the phrase "go for the throat." Like Lucy said that, and I was like, "Oh, interesting. That's got to be relevant."
Yeah, I'm very excited for that arc.
I'm just waiting for Lucy to turn to the camera and say, "Looks like this was beyond the pale."
And then just a picture of her in sunglasses on a motorbike.
Now I'm picturing John immediately after executing Alexander, just being like, maybe you shouldn't have gone ahead and done that. Glasses on, walks into the forest.
Shame you didn't see that coming.
Classic.
Anyway, 22.7, hit us with advice.
Okay, I'll let this slip with wild abandon. 22.7, Lucy, Verona, Macaulay, and Oakham shoot through the outback of Kennet Down Under. Lucy is in desperate need of a smoko and puts in some bloody hard yucca, fucking up heaps of spiders using goblin lollies. After some real ear bashing from a garden variety bogey Sheila, they reach the church and tell the kidnapped bludgers to declare sanctuary. But like all tall poppies, they get cut down when Marachika, glorious and forever soaked in blood though she may be, chucks a sickie and abdicates the church.
I have to say, I love the word bogey Sheila. I think that should really be a type of other.
I had to do a double take because I forgot that other people don't call them lollies. And I'm like, that's just a regular word. I don't understand.
I always forget that's an Australianism.
In preparing for this, I learned that shoot through, chucks a sickie, and bludgers were all Australianisms and was just so confused. What do you mean?
I feel like it's a perfectly reasonable part of the lexicon.
Yeah, it's interesting that chucking a sickie is just an Australianism. Like, it feels like such a core part of life, you know? Like, how do people get by without the ability to do it?
I feel like people chucked a sickie at the Tower of Babel. Like it's an ancient and human
yeah.
universal experience.
Yeah, for
100%.
sure. But yes, finally we make our way to 22.Z. Avery's back, or is she? Because this chapter starts with her dying for real, and then we see Verona and Lucy battling through the church, trying to define what a church even is. A hint: it's got a lot of weird named parts, like an apse and a nave and shit. We also see scenes. Oh, and a narthex. Yes, thank you, Elliot. A narthex is another part of a church. We also see scenes from the past as Charles realizes that Avery is dead and then realizes he was fucked and wrong and Avery has survived. And then we see how Avery survived as all these threads converge. Avery's back, triumphantly removing the abyssal spike from Marisica.
I just want to call out, I feel like that summary skips over what is my highlight of the arc, which was Snowdrop's section of this chapter.
Oh my goodness, it was
which
beautiful.
was just especially one of those ones that rewards a reread where you actually understand the context of why she's going to the promenade.
I really liked Fugly Bob, and that Fugly Bob was not the person but the costume, which is such a great reference to caping as far as worm references go.
Which does make me think, if it's a Fugly Bob costume, then that would mean that the Fugly Bob is cosplaying as Fugly Bob, and then the mutual fiction of it. And I wonder if we're going to have a future web serial where, in hindsight, one of the Lost was cosplaying as them the entire time.
A secret Otherverse story. We won't even realize it's in this universe.
I bet it's the family with the shark that they kept throwing out of the fishbowl, and it enlarged to a full-size shark and then came back. I bet that's the next web serial.
I was thinking it might be the bondage guinea pig.
Oh, of course.
Hamster, I think. Let's be accurate.
Excuse my poor taxonomy.
Yeah, no, it made me wonder if Fugly Bob has any, like, or, is hooked up with the Tearaway kid at all. Like, I would, yeah. I mean,
is
probably
not. Meet up
but
for
like
the mascot,
right?
Lost mascots.
They're both from the comic contest, the con path. Where you have to use a variety of masks to pretend to be a variety of different characters, so you can get nerd cred. And finally get to a signature from the Queen of Ends.
You have to collect PAX badges by putting on different cosplay outfits and fighting your way through swarms of non-deodorant wearing convention goers.
I mean, that doesn't sound that different to the path they did with Liberty a couple of arcs ago.
Yeah, true.
And also, can we just point out how amazingly protagonist-like Avery was at the end of 22.Z?
Oh, truly.
It was so triumphant, wasn't it? It was.
We got 20-ish minutes in before Bird managed to hit us with something like that. Yeah. No, I agree. Like, it was one of those moments where I think within 24 hours of the chapter coming out, there were like 3 bits of fan art on the subreddit, which I think the last time that happened was like Kennet being found.
The moon hatching. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that sort of, I think, highlights what a moment it was. That, like, these big moments just attract a bunch of fan art immediately, and this was one of them.
And just saying that Avery had a pretty significant hand in the founding as well.
Yeah, but that was Verona's baby even more, I think. Anyway, let's not bicker.
I'm right.
I just want to launch off something viceVersailes written here as well, which is just I really enjoyed how much this arc stepped up using the banner art very direct. Like, after kind of spending 21 arcs playing with them a little bit and taking the kind of tears out of each other's and putting them back, this arc really started to like specifically start taking Avery out of things in a very fun way and using it like mid chapter to reframe our minds and stuff. It was very fun.
There was in just 22.Z alone, there was Avery disappearing from her own banner art after the fake death at the very beginning. There was Charles's perspective with the old glass shattered brick banner from when he became Carmine.
I also think he had that banner in Arc 21 when he had Interludes too. Like, I think that's just become the Charles banner, which is very fun.
I find it very interesting that it's Lucy's zone. Like the picture is of Lucy's area with its swords and fox mask, which I think is a good way to spit on John's grave, I guess.
That's okay. He killed Breast Spider.
Charles is definitely going for the full set of possible insults to John's memory.
Yeah. And then, like 22.2, I think it was. That's the one where Verona starts to convince herself Avery's dead, and so we get a new banner that's just with her and Lucy in it. That's my favorite use of the banners so far. I remember everyone absolutely losing their minds when they got to that part of the chapter.
I'm really bad at looking at the banner art, like actually looking at it. Like, I notice that it's there, but I don't consider it for whatever reason. And so that sort of went over my head with the Verona one the first time I read it. And then I'm like, okay, like these, it was the end of the chapter was almost like immediately after that. And I'm like, okay, there's clearly something going on there. And then I sort of like looked and I'm like, Avery disappeared. Does this mean this is the moment that Avery died? There was a good little panic just there.
A picture can tell 1,000 words, and that one says she's dead, she's dead, she's dead, she's dead, she's dead.
500 times.
I never totally broke faith, but I was definitely worried.
I never believed that she wasn't coming back to the story in some capacity, but definitely throughout the arc, I was heavily fluctuating on what I thought Avery coming back could look like. Like, I think one of the tinfoils I pitched about halfway through the arc was that like Yi Yun might have her soul trapped in a glass jar somewhere, and we were going to like put her in a Grobard body or something. Like, I really started to guess
her stronger, faster.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we got we know that there's a fake Avery running around out there, so I think there were some genuine fan theories of like replacement theories, or like Avery is dead, but actually we're going to get a new Avery, so it'll be fine. Kind of like pretty weird ones.
I was tossing around the exact opposite of what happened, where I was thinking, oh, if Avery's dead, then I wonder if they could like construct her from her successes, the check marks, and like sort of spin, because I think Verona was talking about how she would like that to be done if she died. Like, pull together as many echoes and whatnot of her as you can and assemble them into a new cool other.
Oh, on the topic of that, she did sort of realize that by making Gillette.
She did.
That's a good point.
But I wouldn't put it past Wildbow to really take that foreshadowing for a spin.
Yeah, I just any of the ones where Avery kind of actually like I find those ones if it wasn't Avery, like if it was the Finder replacing her, or like some reconstruction, that's too existentially horrifying for me. I kind of wouldn't have I would have died, I think. Like, it needed to be, it was still Avery's original soul or whatever, it was just in a new body, because for some reason that's way less. I would rather be a soul in a jar than like a perfect reconstruction of me, but it's technically not me. Like,
wanting that continuity.
Yeah, like when Guillerme teleported them with the winter glamour, and they're like, how did that work? And he's like, it's best you don't think about it, which I felt like was implying that they're actually like that old Star Trek transporter thing where it's like you destroy your original selves and build new ones and just kind of hope no one notices, and like that's more terrifying to me than the idea that Avery would just live as a soul in a glass jar.
There is an awful lot of existential terror around the concept of personhood, just like in the Otherverse in general.
Yeah.
Like the whole Last Thursday-ism of the Undercity. Do you remember the little boy Driscoll? No, or was that Easton?
Yep.
Where the triple interlude where we saw the Luna Hare's birth, and we saw the Bittersweet Witch's birth, and then we saw a human's birth, and the humans was like the most alien one.
Yeah.
And then
what a great chapter that was.
Yeah.
and then you get Bracken. No, was it Bracken? someone in the Undercity was like, yeah, have you ever considered like how weird it is how humans are born? Like it's pretty strange. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's just an awful lot of like, are people even real floating around?
Yeah.
I get the strong impression from the like Chakra's book, the self and spirit, the soul, that whole collection of material in the canon, that there is nothing special about humans. There is no human essence that makes them anything other than another variety of other in the world, but they just have legislated it so much and like put it into so many different books that for some reason self is inextricably different because I say so than all the other materials in the setting.
Well, no, I think there are even others with explicit. Like, I think it's that old like biology problem, which is like if you try to draw a line in taxonomy anywhere, some fucking creature will come along that doesn't do it.
Mm.
Like no
As
matter
is
how
the
you try to
Australian
define
way
it.
with the platypus.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's always gonna be some fucker out there who takes any taxonomy line you draw and just takes a dump on it. And I feel like you see that with like all the soul and self stuff is like an attempt to kind of define what makes a person a person. There's an other out there, like the ordinary family were probably like another one where it's like they probably broke that in some way. Like all these definitions are kind of like they're never 100%.
Yeah, and even if it's not a problem on the like biology or the otherverse equivalent of biology level, then it's on the naming level. Like
Oh yeah.
like, oh, goblin's totally different to fairy. I think I was like 25 years old when I found out that the lobster that exists in Australia isn't the lobster that everyone is going on about when you see it in shows in America. Like they're just completely different species entirely.
Wait, really?
They like look and taste and feel and everything differently.
Yeah. Welcome to carcinization. Everything becomes crabs if you wait long enough.
Yeah, or if you're talking about magpies and people think you're talking about like the northern hemisphere magpie.
Or possums in the northern hemisphere possum.
Yeah. The one case where we get the cute fluffy one and you get the ratty bastard looking one.
I know, like the one marsupial that kind of isn't in Australia / Indonesia, and they just got like the opossums must have gone through the ringer to get all the way up there because they really look like there's some generational trauma from that journey still sitting on them.
Snowdrop says she's fine.
Yeah, so the next thing we got here written down is I just really want to take a moment to gloat to the sounds in the background of Brett's house burning the fuck down and just how right and everything is right in the world. The only thing that I regret is that Verona got blamed but didn't do it. But we'll see how that works out.
If
Verona
she had
being
done
blamed
it
for
and
it
gotten blamed, that would have been better.
Yeah, because then at least she has a vindication and she can like hold that as a card to be like, oh no, like I took control over my life and like showed you that I'm the boss, and like it's not ideal, but like it's a path forward. Whereas like this is the worst of both worlds, where she didn't have agency in it. In fact, she failed to protect it, and then on top of that, Brett is going to blame her for it. And so he's really just going to be stewing in that.
But we've been getting too lucky. Like, Brett just hasn't been in the story for arcs and arcs now. Like, he's been around and sometimes he gets featured, but like, Verona has had all this time to grow and be away from him, and he just kind of hasn't been an active problem. And I personally, I think I'm ready for that to change. And so I kind of like that we got this. Yeah, their house is burnt down, but it's becoming a bit of a curse as much as a blessing, because now I think we're going to have to finally have some conversations with Brett. I hope. I think that would be really fun.
I do see where you're coming from.
The real problem there is the massive windfall of karma that Helen must have gotten for destroying his house. I mean, she must be cruising.
She's living the good life now.
It's the entire universe is like, yes, that was an excellent decision. And I can't disagree. Maybe even makes Helen worth it.
Helen's good, actually. We've turned around. The official Pearl Reflection stance is now Helen was worth it.
Yeah, we're strict additive utilitarians, just all of the good minus all of the bad. And Helen just hit the infinite good. So unfortunately, she's the hero of the story now. Not the protagonist, though.
Just the hero.
Just the hero.
You were saying?
Yeah, so when Elliot was saying about how Brett has sort of been fading into the background of the story, I quite like that because that's sort of like a realistic view of how someone grows past their trauma. You're never going to have like a gotcha moment where you just say exactly the right words and they fall down and admit they were wrong and everything is happy ever after. It's more just that Verona has her own shit going on and Brett steadily loses his ability to ruin her life. And I think that, I'm sticking to my guns here and saying it was a good thing the house burned down, even though it burned a lot of Verona's stuff and history, is because she, yes, she did lose a lot of her childhood and whatnot, but we saw that was kind of the case in her very first chapter when she was deciding on the personal item she was going to bring to the ritual, and she ended up on the scissors. It's like she wants to cut that thing, and then she wanted to cut out her own humanity to become an other, with the sort of flawed thinking that the way to become an other is to remove something from a whole person rather than sort of growing into another thing. But now she has done that. Like that past has been excised from her life. The house was burned down, and she has now room. She has had the room to grow into a person beyond that, so that even though her entire innocent life is sort of shattered now, she's still fine. She's a person, a whole person, and also a badass other. And
I
also,
think there's a really salient thing to add there, where in the first chapter of this arc, Verona is calling all those names from different others that have agreed through the markets to empower this Aurum trial. And what was the anagram again? Hate
It
babes.
was hate babes, which is a great anagram.
Invoking the grand power of hate babes, she uses glamour without any instruments because she is an artist, and she reflects on how it had waned because of her dad, but she has found that identity again, and she's reinforced it repeatedly, and now she can leverage that internal strength, internal coherency, and internal pattern to do this grand conjuration. And it's the sort of thing where Verona of the beginning of the story would have been keen to reduce herself down, as you were saying, but has now built herself up to the point that she has this independent strength and these independent skills that you can burn her dad's house down, and actually she's totally fine. Like, she wasn't even there.
Yeah, I guess, because I agree, so much of Verona's stuff has been about her growing recently, and we even saw that there was a moment this arc with Miss where she noticed the way Miss was standing around her and Lucy reminded her of how she stands around her dad, and rather than that sending her down any kind of bad thought spiral, she managed to steer it into something productive. And that, I think, ties into a lot of what you were talking about, Bird, with the way you realistically grow beyond these kinds of traumas. But I also think someone like Brett will make efforts to claw his way back in. And so I guess that's what I'm interested in seeing how this new Verona who has grown is able to handle that, because I don't think it will. I have trust in her that I don't think it will get to her as much as it would have 10 arcs ago.
It wound up being a bit of a plus and a minus, because it cauterized that sort of infected wound, burning down the house, but the blame did go to Verona, and that's definitely going to be a thing.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see how, this Verona, who is just a stronger person now, is able to cope with that. And in much the same way, what I really loved about what happened to Avery in this arc is, Avery was left dying in the paths with kind of one person who knew she was there. Like it feels like it's directly mirroring sort of where she was pre the story before Miss Hardy stepped in. Like it was Avery shut off from the world, kind of lost under the radar, everyone not really knowing about her, and she managed to turn that into something where she fucking came in and completely owned a goddess.
And now that you've mentioned that, and Lucy started the arc in the hotel room with her mother, and those two were the only people like them in the building.
Yeah.
And like she was really struggling with the world not being designed for people like her.
Yeah, like I think, it just makes sense that a lot of I think we're maybe approaching the end of the story.
They said for
obvious
the 104th time.
Yeah, exactly. Obvious exclamation mark above that statement. But it would make sense to, I'm just thinking I would expect the story to have a lot of these moments where we see how much the Kenneteers have grown by directly contrasting what they're able to do now with moments that remind us of where they were at the start or before the story, and that is with Avery stuff. And so I think Verona having some kind of conflict with Brett in arc 23 that just doesn't get to her as much and is maybe I would never say that Verona is the person who has to help fix Brett, but obviously even she is on team Brett does need to get fixed. So her ability to point him in the direction of people who can do that, which is also away from herself, stuff like that is kind of something I could see happening. And I'm very excited to see how that is handled because
it's sort of the best revenge is living well thing.
Yeah, exactly. And just, I can see Verona being in the position now to just be like, oh, fuck off and get help, but actually kind of recruit people to help him actually get help or something.
Yeah, it's watch a 14-year-old girl be a better parent and protector than you ever were.
Yeah, exactly. While not getting dragged too much into his shit, because it's also worst case scenario if Verona actually gets tied to Brett in any way long term, I think.
Yeah. Definitely harder now that he hasn't got her stuff to threaten.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be. I remember when you first pitched the house burning down stuff, over 10 arcs ago. It was to kick Brett out of his rut, and it will be interesting to explore. Yeah, if this does that at all, how the other characters in the story might try to use that to nudge him in a more positive direction overall. Because I don't think Brett's got a long climb ahead of him. But it'll be interesting to see if this is the start of it, what that might look like.
If I may draw a couple different pieces together, we have one piece of characterization for Brett that has come up quite often in regards to Verona's hand, which is that he understands visceral pain a lot better than he understands any other human experience. And is able to help Verona and parent her properly when she's just in need of getting to the ER and recognizing that she's in chronic pain. So you could say that his understanding of visceral stakes and things like food and clothes and a house is substantially better than in any of his emotional intelligence. So his house burning down might be one of the most salient messages he can get. But to then draw that into Verona's arc, she had talked to Guillerme about how she might someday be able to handle this wintry curse of having gone out on a limb, overspent herself, and now being permanently injured. And he said if she can argue well enough that the arc isn't complete and this is actually a transitory stage, then she will be able to resolve it in some way. So I think that there is a world where this confrontation between Brett and Verona is something where Verona wins out, and uses that to complete the arc with her hand, because that is something that Brett has actually been able to connect to. So she sends him on the right path. She goes, I have maybe taken a first step in my dad being a remotely functional human being without ever needing that myself because I'm an independent space. And then finally the curse ends. I think that would be a quite elegant arc.
Yeah, I guess the thing I'd want to add on to that is I feel like the other half of Brett he really he yearns for and hates not getting to play the like white picket fence American dream dad. Like it seems like his spiral really began when his life became not just the cookie cutter, standard, like classic, white picket fence sort of dream. So like that for me is the other wrinkle in like any potential Brett is moving forward sort of story arc. It's like eventually he has to come to terms with the fact that that might not be in the cards for him anymore, or what he used to have certainly isn't in the cards for him anymore. So that that feels like the sort of, I don't know, like that feels like the missing piece, I guess, to me. Is I don't know how the house burning did.
Well, his enjoyment of the white picket fence ideal being shut down entirely by his house burning down.
Yeah.
Because his daughter supposedly hates him so much. Could be like the ultimate punctuation mark for him.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I mean, this feels like it's going to be a big thread in Arc 23 in general, I hope, because we also see in 22.Z a lot of, well, the first thing Avery sees when she comes back to life is she goes to the promenade and sees her parents mourning her, or, they're not having the worst time, but the first thing that happens with Avery is we focus on the effect that her stunt has had on her family. And so I don't know. I'm definitely, we talked about this. This is obviously coming out after our episode on 23.1. I'm very much hoping for an arc that focuses a lot on the parents and the kids before we sort of head into the final confrontation against Charles and co.
We'll have to see.
I have got a bit of a running idea about the order of events of the climax, because if you like sort of squint at the antagonists arranged before us, it's pretty much just the original conspirators. Like we've got like Liz has flipped, the Red Heron kids are sort of still around, but also sort of not. And then you've got the Red Heron teachers. And so you've got the practitioner establishment, the representative or the representatives of Kennet as a place and how it's failed the children in it. And you've got sort of Edith, what's left of Edith. And you've got sort of Mariska, what's left of Mariska. And you've got sort of Chuck, what's left of him in there. And
what's to come.
Yeah, what he has become. The caterpillars have metamorphosized. I don't actually know how to verb that. And if we follow that pattern to be like, where would the parents fit in that? And I'm tempted to say that they would be the epilogue, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you sort of knock off Edith and then Mariska and then Charles, and then at the end you address the root cause of like the trio's individual struggles, which was never a magical thing.
I feel like something more simultaneous sounds more Wild Bowie, I guess, to me. Like why wait to why wait to tackle the origins when you're fighting the embodiments of all your worst impulses? Because the culprits have long represented the worst paths the Kenneteers could have gone down. And so I think tying the parents into the conflict against the three of them directly kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, what is it? The hero of 1,000 faces, and when they return home changed. Too bad for Verona. Hey,
whoopsie daisy! There's just two of me now.
And the home is just a steaming pile of ash,
as she likes it.
Hey, do you think Wildbow has been, just on the topic of what you were saying about the conspirators, like, dwindling, do you think Edith has been slowly building towards a reference towards the indie video game What Remains of Edith Finch over all this time?
Yes, that game that I'm definitely familiar with.
Yeah.
I'm tangentially familiar. I would wonder where her vast extended family is.
Well,
Well, she
I
is
don't
her own
know.
extended family. She's a complex spirit, and can
Yeah.
model her as all her own family.
She's extended around the whole town.
Oh yeah. Stretchy.
What a terrible joke.
She's currently in her circle phase. just a big old border. That natural arc of every living person.
Yeah, we've all
A
been there.
circle phase. Is
Yeah.
this like when an artist goes through, Picasso's blue period? Was when he painted himself blue and wrapped himself around a town.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you saying you haven't done that?
I think I thought the only person who had done that was Tobias Funke, but I guess more people do it than I thought.
He was a real trendsetter.
I mean, fair enough.
From the selection of topics, shall we talk about the suspense of Avery's death?
Really
I don't know what you mean. I was,
heavily.
I know most of us were entirely unfooled and knew that she was fine the whole time.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I definitely didn't have anxiety driving me backwards, crab walking up the wall,
what?
screaming.
No, I definitely didn't stop making my cardboard Avery deer mask for Halloween out of panic. But
I'd be curious if there's anyone listening to this who just calmly read 22.1, nice and slowly the first time, because I'm pretty sure the universal experience as everyone sat down with 22.1 was where's Avery, where's Avery, where's Avery, where's Avery, where's Avery, where's Avery.
she's dead. She's dead. She's dead. She's dead. But
We must study this person.
I think I've got a listicle here of all the things to throw off the scent, and the one that really jumps out to me was how Verona ran through with Lucy the different possibilities for why calling Avery's name wasn't working. They mostly covered, maybe she's in a different realm. Wait, no, it can't be this one, can't be that one, can't be that one, can't be that one. The paths maybe, but probably not. Maybe she's like in a spirit-proofed cage somewhere, and like the two of them like gradually developing in panic, which was a great red herring for the fact that Avery just chose not to respond, or more accurately, might have just been unconscious, which is a pretty good reason to not be replying to text messages from your friends.
It was very annoying because that was the first thought that I had when she didn't respond. It's like, oh, well, clearly she's just like passed out on a path somewhere. And
Yeah.
I just got increasingly twisted up around it because I'm like, oh no, that's a long time to be passed out. That can't possibly be it. And all these other possibilities, and they just require this like little bit of thinking around the problem, and then all of a sudden,
and there was
12
that
layers deep.
Yeah, there was that slow rollout, so it never really felt like you could put it behind you. Like Charles reacting emotionally, the Sable appearing, the Kellys rising anxieties. The question was always nagging.
Yeah, God, I just feel like I was lost for 100 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because it's been 2 arcs in a row we've had that. Like arc 21 had that ambient pressure of the Kennetys being exiled and how that was all kind of getting to them, and then arc 22 they kind of got back home, but their home was just an absolute shit show. And then also, arc 22, the whole time there was just that ambient thing hanging over all of us, which was, I think Avery. I mean, something's happened to Avery, and I mean, you're right. Like it just the way 22.2 kind of told Verona and the audience to just trust and like it, let the story unfold. I think kind of calmed you down so that everyone wasn't like actively losing their minds, but it still definitely sat in your head for the whole rest of the arc.
Verona was having a lot of trouble because her main shtick in the dynamic with Lucy and Avery and Verona is just hang back, using their massive power source to do something really big and cool. And she simultaneously was running low on power inexplicably, and had no flanking friend to buy her time. So we had those really tense encounters with her where glamours were breaking really easily, runes weren't doing as much or weren't like snapping into place, cards just missed. the reason I wanted to dwell on this was because I don't know if it's been confirmed in text. I only saw it as a theory. But the thing is that every conversation with like every mention of Avery, every attempt to reach out to her, the conversation with the Avery doodle in the mirror, I read a theory that actively, tangibly helped Avery recover because it provided her missed opportunities for her coin boon. So that every time she didn't reply, every time she could have gone back, weakened as she was, she got a little path dollar, and Snowdrop went out to buy her healing potion.
Yeah.
Which I think is very much a very efficient actualization of the message that the girls settled on of like, we'll have faith in you, we'll hope for your return, we'll act as though you're okay, we'll speak as though you're okay, and that actively manifested that and like let her recover. Which
I actually
is
forgot that
very
that was
sweet.
a theory and not just straight up stated in the text because it just works so well.
Yeah, I've also just accepted it as headcanon. But yeah, I also really like that as extending this idea. If this is Avery's, like if this is meant to mirror how Avery, almost fell through the cracks before the start of the story, like it's another one of those little things that separates who Avery is now from who she was before. That it was like, even if there were people who didn't have the time or knowledge or awareness to be able to go and find her and save her directly, it's like she's now in a place where she gets these little benefits from just the universe's acknowledgement that somewhere out there they're thinking of her, like because pre-story when Avery like was doing her stuff where she wasn't talking to people and stuff, like I'm sure her parents were still giving her some attention and trying to get her involved in some activities. It was just too easy for her to say no and kind of get passed by on them. And it's like now, even if that's kind of happening because, she's bleeding out in the path or whatever, she's still kind of getting a concrete bit of benefit from it because that's just the better place she's in now.
So does she still have a bunch of coins, do you think?
I think Snowdrop spent them all, the greedy
spent?
little.
Bloody Snowdrop.
Come on, Snow.
Maybe this was Avery's get-rich-quick scheme and Snowdrop has absolutely fucked it.
Okay, here's the plan. I'm gonna die.
Now that's step one. Stay with me.
But it would be funny to like try to game it by like quadruple booking yourself just for like 10 days in a row and then not going to any of the things. So you sign up for all these activities and then don't go and sit on a path and just drown in cash. I'm sure that would work.
I think it would work like there was the path where the economy was in reverse. So the beggar was really sad because he was getting so much money. And I think there was some mention there that there's cursed coinage, like the ability to, and I imagine that's how the boon sours itself if you try and game it.
I also think if you kind of say you're going to something and then just don't go, I don't think that counts for what the coins are for.
You might also just gainsay yourself within the whole process. But just reading over does this count for 2 on Avery's holiday count? She went to Thunder Bay. Now she went to the pots and died a little but got better. Verona went to visit Thunder Bay to say hi. I suppose in a way all 3 of them got to have a brief sojourn while they were exiled, but I think whether or not that counts as a holiday.
Hey, she also went to visit a friend in England.
Oh yeah, true.
Was that a holiday? But that was like 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, that was like popping down to the shops.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I think Avery could like pop to the moon. So it's just a question of whether Avery considers it a holiday.
Do you think if you had the ability to travel anywhere in the world, would you be like more likely to take a nice relaxing holiday or less likely? Because like, you go somewhere and then you can just come back immediately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would take away or, like you wouldn't make such of an event out of a holiday, would you? Because it's not like, oh, I need to spend a day in a plane traveling to the other side of the world and book accommodation. Like it's just like I'm just going to go. yeah, I'm just going to go to the Bangkok markets for a couple of hours. Like,
Yeah.
no effort. Like, it would change how you perceive the idea of travel for sure.
And also just like the idea of a holiday, because like I feel Avery is at a point where she no longer really needs to worry about money ever, because like she can just be like, oh yeah, I'll just take you on around the trip in 30 seconds, just keep your eyes closed, and I'll walk you through a path and drop you on the other side and just charge you for a plane ticket. It's like she
But even beyond that, as somebody who is looking to try and, purchase an apartment in Sydney somewhat soon, like the desire to live somewhere that's like, 3 or 4 hours out of the city is so strong for house price reasons. But then the travel is the real killer. So really, if you could just buy real estate anywhere in the world and travel time wouldn't be a big deal, imagine how much money you would save on a fucking mortgage. It would be great.
would you even need real estate?
Oh, we're asking the big questions here. And I
I-
love
No,
it.
I would have like a big mansion in somewhere
Yeah,
like just out in the middle of nowhere with a lot
Exactly
of
right.
doors in it. If I were Avery,
Or just like a room with a lot of doors in Verona's domain.
True.
Like she's always got a place to crash. She is part of a trio.
Yeah, but you want to accumulate, the whole point of getting a house is to accumulate junk. Right?
She does need a place to put all her stuff.
Yeah.
Other than
And Snowdrop
the
stuff.
bangle around her wrist that everything is just
Yeah,
glamored
true.
onto.
I just want to see art of Avery with in 4 years in the future, where she's had to go to her other arm and her ankles, and she has like gauntlets worth of bracelets. There's just too many things hanging off of her. She jangles.
She's a straight up like Final Fantasy character with like a million belts hanging around, but each of those belts is just covered in objects.
No, like I could just imagine one day like Avery will have to take everything off for like, I don't know, to go into surgery or something, and she'll just like have to take all this stuff. She'll be like, oh my god, is that what my wrists look like? And she won't have seen them for a decade.
Oh, that's right, I got a tattoo.
Yeah, that's where I put that.
For me, I would have a international routine. I'd be like regularly going for like to a particular place for breakfast, 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 and just kind of let the sun set. So in a way, it would be less of a holiday method and more of a like the world is your oyster sort of thinking. And I think from there you can only make like Avery and value the people that you are visiting rather than the location, because it all just blurs together.
Yeah.
And it does make me think that Avery is like the one that's most detached from her humanity, give or take an aura. But also she's just spent a lot of time on the paths, and she absorbed a lot of spirit stuff, and
Oh yeah.
like just that whole thing that she's got going right now is like she definitely feels like someone who exists on the fringes and like just doesn't have the same concerns as regular people.
Well, but that's what's fun about Avery is like a weird paradox, because she's both the path runner and also the network guru. And so it's like I think that's where I kind of, as well as having to confront her family after this little stunt, I'm going to be very interested to see if, getting stuffed full of Snowdrop spirit while being on the paths for a couple of days has like affected any relationships in this network she's been building, because I think we've heard time and time again that like, paths and connections can get a bit finicky. So, while I don't expect they've all just evaporated or something, I wonder if this is going to have hurt any of Avery's kind of looser relationships or something.
Yeah, like is she going to be on a hockey team again?
Yeah. Or some of the practitioners in her network, because she wasn't that close to it, she's going to have a harder time talking to them again or something. Yeah.
Maybe that could
Gonna
be
have
the
to reach
favor that
out.
she gets from Florin.
Florin, I'm in desperate need of networking.
Yeah, we got to see. Yeah, I can't. There's so many loose threads in this story still, and I just have no idea when any of them might come into play. It's so fun. I love the Wildbird's ability to just throw 100 balls in the air. for these stories.
And we're at the point where we're close enough to the end,
Sure.
question mark, that like it could be the point where he's dropping stuff for a sequel.
Yeah, well, I want to like. I mean, that's a level of speculation beyond even end of the story. Is what after the story looks like. Yeah,
He's not gonna. He surely can't tie up everything. Like, there's got to be something to do next, and we're at the point where we could reasonably be being introduced to the things that are not going to be addressed.
Yeah.
Definitely a very important thing that needs to be addressed is Lucy's inevitable smoko, because this woman has not had a break.
Yeah. This is a point I wanted to bring up as well, which is now we've had an arc without Verona. That was arc 10, where she went on her beach holiday, and now we've had arc 22 without Avery because she went on her, I don't know, Queen of Ends visit holiday. So Lucy is the only one who is fully dedicated to this job and hasn't taken a vacation. And God, if you asked me to pick a Kenneteer who fucking needs one, it would have been Lucy. So
she's also the Kenneteer who I think is the least capable of just taking a holiday.
Yeah, well, yeah, that she's the sort of person who I'm like, you need a holiday because she's bad at taking them.
Yeah, and like, what do I even think Lucy would do on a holiday?
She would practice her guitar, and she would listen to music, and then once she'd done those two things, she would get back to work.
She would be on holiday studying the blade.
Yeah, and the gushing granny gun, and the pen spear, and the Brotherhood firepower knife, and the.
Yeah, I could see Lucy being one of those people who, when she goes on vacation, she manages to like. Get involved with like a charity wherever she goes to like help build something. But I don't know. Her ability to switch off has been
less a holiday, more of a side quest.
Yeah, to relax, I've created a startup business.
I mean, what would be nice actually is if she took a holiday that was just her going to visit Booker, so he can't keep pulling this shit where he's only here for half a day. Like that would be. I feel like the ultimate vacation for Lucy is just getting to, I don't know, go with Booker somewhere.
Straight
and
up
just like
that.
That feels like the key to getting her to relax.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking of it, I just bet that like there would be a moment where Lucy was finally like getting ready to settle in and actually have a holiday and relax, and then Guillaume jumps out of the cupboard and tries to stab her.
Okay.
Of course.
Never let your guard down.
Bulletproof. I'm thinking we've been talking about how the girls have each gone through their different arcs and are now in a place that resonates with where they used to be. For Lucy, there's always been this narrative of injustice, where Verona has been mistreated by her father, and Avery has been neglected. Lucy has had familial support out the wazoo, but no community support. And as a reflection of that, with the sword moot, we've seen her directly take the reins on making the world a better, fairer place. And it has just exhausted her. I would love if a chapter opened with just Lucy going, "Oh, I'm so well rested. Time to get back to work." She's just fully replenished. She's real proud of herself. It's very gung ho. We can do it.
Yeah, and I mean, the sword moot was also just so great because it was that it brought together a number of things in Lucy's story. Because I remember the other thing you could say about early story Lucy was that she wasn't willing to compromise, and like Pale has been her journey in kind of learning when you do need to. I mean, obviously, it's very easy to overcompromise, and like she's been discovering like what compromise can look like. Like, so the moot didn't go perfectly, but it was such a huge win that she was able to put that feather in her cap, and like that. This also tied into all the stuff about her, like I think it was with the Winter Fae in Arc 19, but there was the concept of her like wedding the practice, or yeah, like wedding into the practice, and it was less about actually marrying a guy, but like potentially just her being one of those people who can kind of enter the system a little bit, but to actually fix it. Like she's not making that mistake of joining the system and becoming a cog in the machine and being like Eloise. I think is the counterexample of Eloise is somebody who rather like kind of went into the system is trying to get power, but not really so she can change it. Like Lucy kind of did this sword move, and it was and Charles hates it because Charles is like, Lucy's done this in the most establishment practitioner-y way possible and had to make sacrifices, but like what Lucy's done is a huge fucking improvement. Like it was an absolutely massive victory. And even if it wasn't like exactly where we want things to be, it's like kick-started the change that the Kennetiers want.
Remind me to mention that huge win with the sword moot.
Oh my goodness.
And Lucy with my prediction later.
Sure.
But yeah, the next point I had is I haven't quite like finished pinning down my thoughts on it, but there's definitely something where how Helen made the big declaration that she was confident, and how that ruined her little hide and seek ritual, and led to her feeling indebted enough to then get forsworn and whatnot. And how it was like the absolute ruin of her that she confidently declared something and it exposed a lie, sort of. And then compare that to Verona and Lucy repeatedly in this arc, declaring how confident they were that Avery was alive, and just the absolute opposite way that was handled. It's not handled, but how it turned out. Like they confidently asserted something that they were not confident on, and it was like the very picture of the institution itself that sort of got dinged for that. Like Charles got gainsaid because, and he had all the information and etc. But it was, I think it says something about their legitimacy in that something that which can be destroyed by the truth should be, sort of thing. Like the practitioner power is like built on these lies, and they're stealing and just claiming ownership where it's not necessarily theirs until nobody can call them on it, and putting their kids in boxes and saying they're bound permanently and will never be seen again, and nobody can call them on it. Whereas the Verona and Lucy, like they couldn't have made themselves more vulnerable to being called out on bullshit. And it's just because like they have that cachet that they can just trust.
And interestingly enough, then there's Charles, who kind of gets gainsaid at the end around Avery being dead or not dead, you know? Like, you're right, there's an interesting kind of swirl of themes around that.
Yeah, because it's like the Kennetiers place theirs in hope, whereas the Kims do the opposite. Like with the Kims, it's like, you know,
it's a trick.
Hope and positive belief hope and positive belief is the mistake. Whereas in the Kennetiers system, the hope and positive belief is ultimately rewarded. Like, and that feels like, the missing bit for here, I still don't kind of get the Kims as like a metaphor for what they could be, or how they map to the concept of power, like most practitioner families do. But like, I feel like that is probably
I think I have
something
something
that ties
for you
in
there, which is that there's this emphasis of the truth that is only enforced by political power, like whether or not Abraham Musser is a person when he's brimming with echoes and spirits and vestige bits, but he has the authority to say that he's definitely a person. Why would you think otherwise? Look at all the familiars that I have and the implements that I've collected from other people. There's this sort of through line of it having an element of falseness to it. Maybe not exactly a lie, but something that is only able to function because of the power and the pattern behind it, and is otherwise quite feeble or unearnest. And you have the Kims as this very straightforward culmination of that, using every single resource at their disposal to bind someone so that they can't be seen, so that a practitioner sworn to their word can tell a lie and become a lie, as Helen often considers herself. But there's that line when we first see Helen use her practice against, I believe it was the Bellinger kid, the one with the animal sight, the one who got
Jillian.
horrified, Jillian.
Oh, yeah.
She described the horrifying practice as possibly the most true, and I think that's a lie. But it is true of the Kims. They are this most complete picture of what is wrong with the establishment practitioners. They use their power and resources to engineer complete undermining of the system. Like the Seal of Solomon is supposed to be a binding thing. It is a seal, and it binds you to your word. And here we have this immensely successful, immensely dangerous person that can break through bindings, that can work past the system, and ultimately is lying about still being a human, because whenever she is left alone to her devices in the spirit-proof room where she can't be observed, she just tears off her skin and becomes the other that she has become. So I would be looking forward, I think, for Rook to be the one to call that out, and just watch Helen pop. You know, I would suspect that if you can call a Kim directly on the fact that they are a lie, the universe is just going to kind of squeeze them until they disappear. And as Rook has been built up as this true counter-establishment character of like against the boxes that people put themselves in, here we have these practitioners entirely designed around so strongly confining yourself that you squeeze out the other side. It would be a very complete defeat for Rook to be the one to tear that down.
See, I almost my thinking is if you did call Helen out directly, she wouldn't necessarily fade into existence as much as stop being a horror confined to the body of a human and just become a giant messy horror.
Pop.
But I think it would be more fun for somebody to make it clear they figured it out and they know what she is, and use that against her in a way that, like, just because so much of what Helen was about was like no limits, like, you know, they as you said, like, they kind of lie to the spirits, they subvert the rules. They're so, like, Helen defined herself to Charles as being a dog not on a leash, like she just wants to have no limits and just go all out. And so I think it would be kind of justice for somebody to figure out her thing and basically be able to hold horroring over her as a threat if she doesn't toe the line, because it's like, if you know what her secret is and can destroy her into a horror with just a couple of words, she will probably have to do what you say. And I think it would be more fun, rather than turning her into horror, to use it to control her. You know, don't go too far with it, but like to kind of force her to make amends by holding it over her head.
I'm just not sure that either of those would go down. Like the exposing the lie and making her sort of pop into existence, out of existence. If that was ever going to happen, surely it had happened when she was forsworn. Like, if the spirits had the ability to affect the her that's in the box, then like the being forsworn would have done it. And in terms of like blackmailing and controlling her, like, she was willing to not be unforsworn in order to go back to what she was. Like, she was unwilling to compromise on what she was, to the extent that she would have rathered be forsworn when Charles offered her the thing, the salvation. And
That's true.
I just don't think she'd cave to blackmail.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I'm confused by, because it didn't seem like when she was forsworn she turned into a horror. So I think because the my hope is that what happened is she was still kind of humanish, because she was still, like, you know, because the external ambient spirits don't know that she was a horror. Like, that part still didn't pop out. But I don't know. I found that aspect of it confusing.
She is a bit hard to read. I did quite a bit of rereading trying to figure it out. It seems to be that the spirits just dismiss what is actually her weakening the binding that is her body, the human body with the chopsticks. The spirits dismiss that as just being some kind of odd horroring practice. and don't really scrutinize it very much. So I would assume that in the same way with Forswearing being managed by the spirits, they just kind of unplugged her from the wider horror that is all of her limbs, because the limbs weren't affected at all, which would indicate that the mass of infinite flesh is still out there somewhere and had to be like reattached, and that was what she was asking Charles for.
Well, that mass was definitely still around because the limbs were still walking around when she was forsworn, and the family have the limbs still in service, and they didn't know that Helen was
crazy, right? That seems so crazy.
Yeah, and so that's if
it's like Lucy's cup game, but at a whole extra level.
Yeah, if I'm putting my money on Helen being like beaten properly, then I would say that the real Helen is the monstrosity of flesh. And so really exposing the lie would just be about like removing that shell that she's bound into that makes her look human and able to practice.
Well, yeah.
Rook just steals the body.
Then you've still got a horror on your hands. So like that's not the end of beating Helen. Like even if you
I think it might be because if she becomes a horror, like there are other horrors around. She's not that amazing. Like people know how to like kill a horror.
Oh, I mean, yeah, sure, but like, I mean, if we're talking the Kenneteers are against her on the battlefield, and they're like, we know your secret. There's still a horror on the battlefield that they have to deal with, like it's.
But my thinking is, what would Helen's motivation be to fight them at that point? Like, could they just turn her into a horror, and then it's like, all right, like here's Monty, try to learn how to live a good life as the other that you have been all along.
Care to join us in Kennet? We have a marvelous community in Kennet below. Sorry, Kennet down under, for various horrors.
I genuinely think that might work. Like, just be like, oh, no, you are just like not bound anymore. Like you're a monstrosity of flesh and crime, but
she has that massive positive karmic windfall from destroying Brett's house, so they have
exactly.
To her.
Exactly. She needs a good ending.
Chillaxes in Kennet Found. Starts a bakery.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I like that idea. I guess. Well, so the other thing I kind of like to circle back on the idea of how the Kims could fit into like a metaphor for how power exists in the real world. The closest analog I have come up with is like some stuff to do with, I don't know, wealthy elite families with ties to criminal underworlds. Like you get the sense that they act like they're just wealthy practitioners or something, but like obviously they've gone through this horrific initiation ritual, and like their secret is kind of under the hood. They're like tied into some of the darkest shit, and so they get hired to kind of help out with rituals and clean up the messes. Like that all feels like kind of criminal underworld ties and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like a thin veneer of respectability over the monster beneath, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So they're the sort of mafia family that I don't know how that fits into any of this theorizing, but that's as close as I've come to mapping the Kims to anything.
So, do you all think we're nearing the end of the story?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Surely.
I've got almost 3 years experience predicting the end of this story, so I can confidently say yes.
Yeah.
I definitely. I can't even remember what context it was, but it really feels like taking out Mariska, not entirely, but taking the nail out of her and sort of having her bleeding and sort of Edith cut down and Charles in debt. It really feels like the main bad guys are all simultaneously vulnerable and like their forces concentrated and they've been boxed in.
It's doable for the first time ever. Like this is the first time where you're like, oh, I can see a world where we're able to rally together and actually maybe fight them.
Well, the first time since summer break.
Yeah.
The moment before they brought the what was it? The ring, Yalda's ring, into the arena
Mm.
to let John finally win the day, and then some effing bird just
All the time Lucy didn't shoot Charles when she could have, and then, you know, he went on and killed John, so that was her lesson.
I think what'll happen is that the next arc is Go for the Throat, and after that we'll have arc 24, Gotten the Throat, and then we'll have arc 25, Throat Was Gotten, and then arc 26, In Memory of Throat, and then finally arc 27, Other Body Parts.
Isn't that Durachet's Familiar's whole shtick at the moment too?
I think so, yeah.
So there's room for having little mini arcs there, learning from other creatures that are at the throat of higher powers.
We'll have arc 28, Leeching, arc 29, Mosquito. I'm sorry, Mozzie.
Cool. Well, unless there's anything else, I think we're at that time where we start hitting you all with the tough questions.
I'm so ready.
So I'll kick it off with the standard one, which is which Kennet other would be your first choice for familiar?
John.
Womp womp.
I have a very okay. I have a new answer. But I would like to elaborate on my old one. I think the important fact of familiarship is you need to find someone that you can live your entire life with, and that is a natural complement to you, because you're looking for someone that is between best friend and life partner, because they won't be going away. So John would have been a great pick for that. Lucy was completely right to think so. But there's also the fact that you're sharing resources. And for John, there was the appeal for the familiarship to be a chance to finally rest and know peace, when he, for his whole life, only ever had those two modes, fight and hurry up and wait. And in turn, that in the way that, like, for example, Snowdrop provides the ability for Avery to skip meals because Snowdrop just pigs out, well, possums out, I suppose, to enable her very active lifestyle, she has a very sedentary familiar. And thinking along those same lines, John is just in very, very good health and is in need of a nap. Meanwhile, I would prefer not to sleep, and I'm not in very good health, so that would have been great. But along those same lines, I'm thinking that with the life that I lead, having a lot of very busy things going on, having to juggle, like a lot of balls in the air, it's important to have a work-life balance. So Luna Hare is the best possible familiar for a domestic person, because she can let you balance anything. So I would offer her the ability to well, I'm not really sure, because she seems like she's doing pretty all right for herself. But I would be hoping for the ability to manage my timetables, because there's so much scheduling I need to do all the time, and it would be really great if I had the swiftness of a rabbit person.
Luna Hare has been a very popular choice recently, and it's like, I mean, I get it. Like, she's a good, solid choice because for everything you outlined and more. She's incredibly friendly. She seems like a really good friend, like someone you can rely on, and the focus on balance is just really hard to pass up.
I feel like she's a good choice in the like good versus evil sort of sense as well. Like, she's just such a good being.
Yeah.
Even if you're not particularly inclined to like the balancing powers in particular or her aesthetic in particular, you're just like, it can't be a bad thing to have more Luna Hare in my life.
It seems like her main character flaw is that she's too nice and sometimes needs to chill out and take care of herself more, which is just like,
And I am
Yeah.
more than happy to provide complete and utter exhaustion at the end of the day to knock her unconscious
exactly.
so that she can sleep.
Yeah, she
That's a
can take
win-win.
some of she can take some of my selfish laziness. Like I've got plenty to spare, you know.
But if not Luna Hair, I think Engine Head would be a good pick for all the same reasons. I would love to be able to skull gasoline and be able to do my normal things by machine powered.
And fucking full on charge into folks
Yeah.
and knock them over. Hell yeah.
You
Like,
never
I know
know when
you
you need the
talk about it.
durability of a car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know you guys already talked about it when in the chapter that it happened, but Verona just like revving with her like voice was such a moment, like at peak, like vivid
The blood
imagery.
igniting in her veins. Oh, that was
Do you think she was
Especially
like,
just because she's so petite, like
Yeah.
just the knowledge that this is like a chapel filled with big boogeymen, like, you know, big burly Marisica boys and like all this stuff, and then there's just this like short 14-year-old girl just fucking growling in this inhuman machine way and then just running around bowling them all over. Like, it was just so cool.
I think you could build an entire MCU movie around just that.
They've
Like,
done worse.
Yeah, like just have a whole lot of build up, and then at the end, Verona does that, and you're like, you know what, worth it.
Totally.
Now, you mentioned drinking gasoline extremely early on in your list for Engine Head. So, is that specifically a thing that you want to do?
Yes, so much. It's a. I've been over the years, you know, I've been very reliant on tea to study. Then I upgraded to coffee.
Okay. Yeah.
Then I upgraded my coffee. And it's just not enough anymore. And I go through 2 a day, and like I've like cold brew them for maximum caffeine infusion. I toss a couple of caffeine pills down. It's just not enough. So if I could just drink straight jet fuel, that would be so good. I'd be able to finally get all my things done.
I'm pretty sure you can extract caffeine with gasoline.
Are you suggesting that I drink caffeinated gasoline?
Yes.
I mean, if you,
I'll go talk to my partner, Engine Head. We'll see what we can do.
I mean, I was going to say, like, if your goal is to go more hardcore than caffeine, biscuits right there. Like,
oh, so true.
How did I not consider biscuit?
I was going through the goblins earlier and thinking, I'm just generally a very cleanly person, but biscuit could make a incredibly smelly cleanliness concoction. So in a way, she's the perfect fit. And as Biscuit is best girl, of course, that's you know, I'm completely convinced. So I'm just going to get Engine Head to possess Biscuit, and then they'll befriend Luna Hair, and then I'll just use that summoning diagram that Verona got, the Eidolon one, and use that to fuse them all together, and then we'll shake hands, and that'll be my new best friend.
I think Biscuit would be a strong candidate just based on the like hidden romantic side. It's not even hidden. It's just she hasn't figured out how to express it yet. But that'd be such a delightful thing to have in your life. Someone who's like that dedicated to something so freaking wholesome.
I mean, you know, there's a reason she's been my choice for the last handful of arcs. Yeah, like Biscuit's legitimately my answer to this question.
You get the opportunity to be the Todd to her Barney, or is it Barney to her Todd? Barney. Either or. Figure it out. Mix drinks and drink them. Do as you will.
But I don't think I would take a familiar right now in the story. Like, everything is so strongly in flux. The future is so uncertain. There's corrupting and destructive forces everywhere. I don't think like a familiar ritual seems like something that you really want to be steady. You know,
I mean, that's a given. There's also like, I think there's a lot of conceits like that built into this kind of, because there's also like the idea of, do they want to be your familiar, which we kind of, it's up to you how much you consider that a factor.
Been neglecting that for sure.
I just tell Biscuit that I'd be willing to drink the relationship drink, something to die for, and then she'd be sold. It'd be fine.
And Also, there's just like so many new interesting people coming to Kennet, especially the Undercity and the Kennet Found at the moment. Like it just it'd almost feel like a shame to take yourself off the market. So like so early. But if you had a gun to my head and made me make a choice, I think I would stick with my choice from last time, Tashlit. For the same reasons as before, but now also like seeing her in a proper crisis. Like she's got the sense to know when to move on and the strength to like be able to back up that choice. And she's got the connections and sort of morality to stay and fight for her friends anyway. Like she could have left and she was planning on it even, but she stuck around like to fight the good fight. And like Tashlit's just I don't even want to say she's like underutilized, but I could do with more Tashlit in my life, but she's perfect the way she is in the story.
Yeah.
Most recently seen with her skin all the way off in her lap, just kicking her feet in a little pool of water, powering a nightmare circle. Definitely a well-adjusted individual that you want to get to know.
I mean, you can't tell me that's not a strong aesthetic.
Yeah. Tashlit to me feels like one of those characters who's just suffered a little bit because Wildbow is too good at introducing even more characters. Like, like Tashlit falling to the background feels like in part just because that like there's Wildbow just always introduces so many things into this story that people like Tashlit, who are kind of cool but not maybe super relevant at given points in time, just have to fall to the background. Like Gashwad is another one where it feels like Gashwad has been in the background even more than he used to be since Arc 13, because conceptually he's kind of been replaced by Kennet Down Under. So he just hasn't been as directly relevant. And it's like it's like the closest I can come to a criticism of stories like Pact and Pale is it's like characters I like don't get enough attention because there's too many other characters who need it even more.
What we really need is a Kennet extended cinematic universe.
Yeah,
I want to see the Biscuit solo movie, and have Tashlit and Biscuit have like a buddy cop dynamic.
well, it's like the we need like the DLC that goes back in time and like so. After Pale finishes, then there's just like a Tashlit arc that shows us little snippets from what she was doing in different parts of the story that we didn't get to see when we were following the Kennet years. Like,
what was Tashlit doing when she was off screen? Well, now you get to know in Tashlit, a Star Wars story.
This is the universe that should be doing that Star Wars bullshit, though, because I'd be far more interested in it here than I would be for Star Wars.
Speaking of spin-offs and Gashwad, it is a crime that we saw that Gashwad formally waged war on the squirrels, and we've got like a hideous monster giant like invading the mythical kingdom, except like the morality is the opposite way around, like where the monster is actually the hero coming in to save the day from these dastardly woodland critters. Like, why are we not seeing that? That is such a cool concept.
Those squirrels can't be villains. They're too cute, right? And I won't hear a word of slang. I don't know about that. They're pretty cute.
We haven't conclusively seen that other race of squirrels didn't deserve
deserve to be genocided.
Interesting argument. Interesting take.
Yeah, it's very easy to judge from outside the situation, but put yourself in their tiny shoes first.
We don't have all the details. No, it's also, I feel like I've said this 100 times, but I'm just going to keep beating this drum because one day Wildbow will have to break. But we still don't know what Gashwad's weapon form is, and he's one of the OG Kennet others, and this just upsets me.
Well, we heard when Biscuit first showed us her weapon form, I think it was Biscuit, where she mentioned like goblins don't generally take a weapon form because that makes it easier to bind to them. And that definitely strikes me as something that Gashwad would flat refuse to like put a chink in his armor.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I just want to know what it is.
Well, it's actually to combine those two. The way that he has managed to go this long without being turned into a weapon form is by having the weapon form of a wet wad of shitty toilet paper on the edge of a stick. So it's a gash wad.
Is that a gash? Is that a real thing?
I do believe that
Wow.
is technically well, a gash is like a cut. So if it were just bloody instead of shitty,
Well,
then it
and
would be a
gash
gash wad.
also means something else.
Yes, there are other implications. So we know what the
That's what I
variety
assumed
of
it
blood
was.
it is. We know where the
Yeah.
blood came from.
Yeah.
And it's just a wad of toilet paper on the end of a stick, and no one wants it.
Right.
Yeah, and we know that the goblin categories are very loosey-goosey and whatnot. But it was repeatedly mentioned that Gashwad is most definitely not the goblin fighter type.
Yeah. There was a fan theory at one point that his weapon form will be a crowbar.
Yeah, and that's
Which
what I was
I
thinking. Like he wouldn't necessarily be a weapon, and I think he would be embarrassed about that, and so that adds to the layer of he does not want to go weapon form.
Oh my
because he
goodness,
knows.
Gashwad's weapon form is something that he's just really embarrassed about because it's like a cute little mug.
He's just shy.
He's just shy about it.
He's a delicate little flower. Never tell the squirrels.
So I guess the other question that we ask everybody that comes on is who's the best Kenneteer? And we're only counting, the OG 3, the prime trinity.
The OG thing is something we only had to add in a last arc because Jay and Megafire tried to get all tricky with this. So you have them to thank for us locking that down.
Throw us the curveball of Julette or Avery's spirit glamour skin, which would also make a great familiar, I suppose. But my answer will always be Lucy, and I haven't added more to the video essay script as to why, but I know that I'm going to format it off of each of the different pillars, evaluate why Lucy is best girl in regards to the pillar of time, the pillar of death, and just do costume changes each time, citations, really evaluate why this is the best possible character. But the reason I believe that, I think I would then also make video essays saying Verona is best girl and Avery is best girl, but I'd start with Lucy because that's the one I feel most personally. The reason that I believe that is that Lucy is in direct contact with the values of Pale. She is directly fighting she's fighting because it's the good fight. She is putting effort in, not just to protect people, but specifically because she thinks that is the right thing to do, and she thinks that the way she's doing it is the right way to do it. And by just reading things and experiencing it through her lens, you get a direct insight into what the story is trying to say. And I value that a lot. I think it's it really the messages that she's trying to deliver, or the messages the story is trying to deliver, are very valuable messages.
I can't disagree.
Yeah.
But Avery.
Well said. Honestly, that's hard to debate. Oh.
And
I mean, I think what's fun about your argument there, VV, is you can make that for each kid. Verona is heavily tied into the other one of the other major themes of Pale, which is this idea of not boxing people in, right? So much of Verona's journey towards becoming a sorceress has been all about not just accepting the role that you're given by the world. And similarly, Avery has had a lot to do with, all sorts of stuff like hope and the paths very much represent the good in the world. Obviously,
the
hot
value
take,
of
but
neglected
Walbo
things.
has integrated each of his protagonists into a major theme of the story.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. I mean, we feel like I would have noticed by now, but
but obviously the best one is the protagonist. I would push back on the idea that the paths represent all that's good in the world. I feel like they're just everything that's in the world, and some of it happens to be good, and most of it is at least whimsical because it's so silly seeing it like by itself. But like, there's definitely bad stuff on the paths.
No, yeah, that's fair. The way I'd want to phrase it, but I struggle to, is because I want to say that they represent a kind of innocence, but obviously that word is so fucking loaded in this universe. But the childlike innocence, like the paths are all about that.
That whimsy.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the world that's magical. Like this is a world where magic is such a fucking curse most of the time, and Avery and the paths are kind of like, hey, but not that.
Yeah, I do think the fact that it is Avery is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I think if hypothetically Verona had have been the path runner in this story, I think we would have gotten a very different lens on the paths. Like, for one, I think she would have definitely homed in on those constructs immediately. But like Avery and her like making connections with the lost to get them to help her through the hard puzzles and all that, I think Verona would have been playing on the Dark Souls edition a lot more.
But my argument to that would be that's the reason why Avery is the one on the paths and Verona isn't. Like you know what I mean? Like
yeah, just pushing against the idea that that's like a thing that is of the paths. I think it's
if I may, I think one of the most important as we're talking about Avery and Lucy, I think one of the most important lines this arc that really summarizes the whole dynamic was, "Hey Ave," she said to the empty bathroom, which was now so full of skin-pricklingly hot steam she couldn't see the door. "I really hope you're okay, because I love you, because we need you, and I'm just going to say, partially because I really want to smack you upside the back of the head for choosing this stuff as a practice instead of something less terrifying, like Goblin Queen stuff."
Yeah. But no, like, I guess personally, I'm of the opinion that Verona would not do the like Pisces sort of stuff, but that's getting deep into Pisces. That's dependent on my read on Pisces stuff being correct, but.
And I don't think Verona necessarily would have gotten too much out of the wolf because she's already got Brett.
Yeah. Would it just like been too recognizable?
She actually manages to read Hazel, like Hazel herself, and like recover all of Hazel's information, because the like dynamic between Hazel and her wolf of a husband and Verona and fucking Brett is roughly the same.
Yeah. But no, I guess, like not to paint the paths as just, like happy-go-lucky time, because they're obviously fucking horrifying in a lot of ways. Like the cakewalk is a good example of that. But they're the place in this universe where magic feels magical, if that makes sense. And
yeah, definitely.
Like that is so much of what is missing from the rest of this universe, and I feel like it's a really important aspect of Pale, is that it has really taken time to do stuff like the founding, because it's like so much of what Miss and the Kennetiers stand for is this idea that like we don't need to let the world weigh us down and make us all miserable. Like, I want to draw another comparison to like Ray. Like there was that time where Massa said to Zed something about how, you remind me of Ray back before he was miserable. And said sort of like, yeah, because you fuckers made him that way. And like that's the aspect of of this world that the paths and Avery kind of stand opposite. Like even the horrifying things on the paths they don't drag you down in that same way. They're not as ambient.
I think on the note of the paths specifically, we've been seeing the Queen of Ends more and more often, which I think is the only sign we have that we are actively reaching the end of the story. But
just watch her be like a version of the Death Card or something, where it's like, oh no, she's actually New Beginnings.
Oh no, you fool! you thought the name explained anything, but actually, just like all the 100 Years Lost speculators, myself included, I think that one of the dynamics of the paths is first there's the value of neglected things, the fact that many of the things that are lost aren't that way because there's something fundamental to them that is lost just because they've been treated that way, and they've ended up there, so they can be found, they can be brought back, recovered. And there's also within that the appearance of complexity and the reality of simplicity, where it doesn't necessarily make sense how it works. It doesn't necessarily make sense why it is that way. But at the end of the day, once you understand a path, there is a way through, and it is coherent and consistent. Is like a culmination of what Avery brings to the table, in that she's using like the black rope. She's using a number of tools that are very adjacent to effective. She's not like directly hitting someone in the face, but she is paying for a bit more wind boost using a coin that she bought off of not being able to make her hockey practice. And she also has gone like the next level above within that, the value of neglected things in taking Snowdrop as a familiar, because the boon companions are like serially neglected and sacrificed by the Finder community. And so within the dynamic of there being valuable things in the past that are set aside, she is someone that reaches even further to grab something out from the jaws of the wolf.
And what better way to exemplify all of these things than beating the huge, powerful, abyssal blood goddess with just a big
magnet.
Fucking magnet.
Just a real big
It is such a baller thing to do.
I bet Wildbow was like 10 when he thought of that scene specifically. Like it's so whimsically simple, straightforward. Well, the enemy has an iron power source, so we are going to remove it with a magnet. It is like completely bonkers in how straightforward it is. I was really glad. I think people that will be reading this in a non-serial fashion will have a bit smoother of an experience, because the final interlude 22.z outlines how Avery achieved this, and does so using only tools that had been previously established. But I remember when the chapter just ended with Avery holding a giant magnet and saving the day, most of the community was like, what? Where'd the giant magnet come from? Where'd she get that? And the answer was, she always had it in here.
Yeah, well, I guess, okay, so we got a vote for Lucy, a vote for Avery. Reuben, who are you currently locked in on as best OG killer tier?
Avery wasn't even in this fucking arc, so you can't pick Avery this arc. I mean, that's ridiculous. So it's obviously Lucy, because Verona, I mean, you know.
It was just concentrated Avery. There was just so much Avery packed into that one pose.
That's very true, but still.
I think you could very easily argue that Wildbow only chose to have Avery disappear for an arc because she has the most word count. But if you were to argue that, you have to then recognize that she has had this opossum plays dead familiar for the entire story.
How about you, Elliot?
Okay, yeah. Well, so then I guess and viceVersailes, you asked for this. You were like, "Are you sure So I've got another question for you, because you said you've answered these ones before.
Oh, wait. You haven't told us your favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, mine.
Don't get away that easily.
Yeah, damn it.
Looks like a bird has caught you.
First of all, Reuben didn't tell us his first choice of familiar, so I'm going to deflect to that while I think.
Cop out alert.
Well, Reuben.
I don't know. Why do I have to choose? I pick all of them. Yeah, I mean,
okay,
there's
muscle.
one correct answer, I guess. And it's
like, okay, boom.
It's the world's hottest cat, Blank Shanks.
Strong choice, to be honest.
I think it would be a fun choice.
You're going to lose your Opal card, your entire wallet, your car keys.
Opal card. I've never not lost an Opal card. So.
and to be honest, you're probably going to get other people's cards
exactly.
and keys, and
hopefully they have a few bucks on them.
You'd find the most weird things in your pockets.
Like how normal cats give you rats to show affection, Blank Shanks would just give you an entire person's life savings and like the little like sticky note on their desk that says their passcode and their bank account number.
Just left shoes all the time.
Exclusively left shoes and right socks, nothing else. That was the deal that was made in the familiar ritual.
Oh no, thongs that have popped out, blown tires.
Now wait, sorry. Now you say right socks. Are socks sided? I've never owned socks that are sided.
Only some socks are sided.
I have exactly one set of socks that have sides on them, and they're like special, like anti-slip gripping socks for when I'm playing sport because I kept
Have they
blisters.
got individuated toe sleeves?
No, I'm not quite that cool.
Casual.
Okay, new implement, toe sleeve socks.
I love it.
Well, you need them because otherwise how else can you wear socks and thongs?
True.
Oh,
There's going to be
cool.
the part of the audience that doesn't know what thongs are.
I was intentionally avoiding clarifying that, yes.
Okay, just cut out this part. No worries.
Okay, so yes, the new question. Given the choice, what do you think your practice might be? And to be clear, I have made a note that you can't just say you'd be a dabbler or a sorceress or none of this Verona cop-out shit. You have to pick a main.
Okay. Elliot, you skipped it again.
Damn it.
I almost fell for that.
Thought I was so smooth. Avery's getting close, but I still just can't look past Verona for my favorite. Kennet here.
Verona is by far the most relatable for me. It's
who doesn't sympathize deeply with the desire to no longer be human?
Right?
She is a fantastic character. Just, a deuteragonist.
Okay. But yeah, so no, what do you both think your practice might be if you were practitioners?
Well, I have spent too much time writing on OMO to not have thought this through way too much.
That makes sense.
There was a time when I was really keen on hosting. I wanted to do a sort of hotel means of hosting where like the likes of The Girl by Candlelight that says like, oh, I really need a vessel, otherwise I'm going to fall away. Just says, don't worry, move in with me. I'll keep you hosted for a little while. When we find you a good vessel, we'll move you on. And that sort of relationship with the other community, it's really appealed to me. But
the practitioner equivalent of a landlord.
Yeah, sort of, but more like having like low rents as long as your roommate sort of thing. Because like I'm not the landlord here. Yeah. You know what? But I'm glad I said specifically that I'm no longer keen on the host idea, and now I'm even less keen on the host idea because that's the last thing that I want to be. So my official answer is yellow shaman, shaman of the color yellow, because I have like 50% of my closet is yellow clothes. I have like 4 yellow shoes. It is by far my favorite color. And the thing that I like about it is that it is a color of 2 grand extremes of wealth and sickness. Because yellow is the color of the sun, but it's also the color of pus. Yellow is the color of gold, but it's also the color of piss. Yellow is the color of joy, but it's also the color of hazard lights and like slow down, stop signs.
Like nuclear fucking radiation warning sort of signage. Yeah.
So it's the happiest color, and you need to run. And I have an anxiety disorder, so I really like the idea of being able to rapidly oscillate between the 2 kinds of panic and manic, and being able to make things yellow as a basic spell and then transmute them to have either of those 2 extremes of yellow qualities, to being able to have like a warmth and like sunshine, like health, to pervade like for a moment, only for it to be immediately sickening radiation and for someone to be very unwell and then just flew back. And traveling as a sunbeam, or just like telling someone to that they can't go this way because I've got yellow tape across the road. I'm sorry, it's yellow and black tape. You can't go this way. And mostly doing all the shamanism via honey, because bees really, really neatly show off that dichotomy, because they're lovely and they will give you sugar and they are a community that cooperates. And if you cross them, they will sting you and it will hurt and they will die just to cause you pain. And I think that's so the bee or honey or yellow in general shaman.
I'm even picturing like you could almost do like what Basil did with the bugs, where you just pour out yellow stuff into an area to like sort of stake a claim.
Yeah,
like, this is now a yellow room. Thank you very much.
this is I've painted the room yellow, and therefore, if you try to do any spell, you have to ask me first.
It's such a specific, domain for you to practice over. I love it.
Yeah, this is the answer of a woman who's thought this through. Like as you said, when you opened up.
So much. Oh my goodness! Like the character that I started writing when I just at the beginning of lockdown, when Omo was like shaping as a community, and Wildbow had just like said to everyone on the main Reddit that this really was not the place for that sort of thing, and people were doing it wrong because the Otherverse is not a setting where there would just be a fun little social media site for practitioners, because that would end in disaster. So then it ended up as its own moderated thing. We figured out like a sort of AU where OMO could be sort of believable, but also still have tension. We banned any talk of diabolism. And then I started writing this host when I was really excited about hosting. And then I heard about collecting, and I got really excited about collecting, so she dabbled in collecting, and it just got worse from there. It just kept getting worse. And I'm still writing her today, but she's just so painful because there's too much going on. And I would just really preferred it if she had decided to be a yellow shaman.
I think I'm like taking almost the exact opposite approach, where you're like hyper specific yellow shaman, whereas I would do a I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of conversion coding, layering different things to have different effects. And so like if you have a galvanized screw, like the layer of zinc on the outside interacts with the layer of iron on the inside to achieve specific things for less money than it would be to fix it otherwise. And so like you could spin a little bit of abyssal gardening into a goblin sword, and then throw a little bit of glamour over the top, and like just very carefully apply it. So you don't have to apply much, but just enough to achieve a specific effect, and then you've essentially like got yourself a custom, like a niche but powerful magic item, and you could just keep doing that. It's like a lick of paint over this, and you could just have this. It's almost like collecting, but without an end goal. Or there was an app. It was like Alchemy or something, where you would just like you'd start with the 4 elements, and then you just mix the two, like earth and water equals mud, and then you would go mud and earth again would be something else, and then like
mud and earth is quicksand, so on.
Yeah, and you'd get into the weirdest like categories of just like if you just add this to this, and then 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 all of a sudden you've got like a library. And it's like it'd be that. It'd be like starting with base elements and then chaining them together in almost like it's almost like doing organic chemistry.
But like knowing that you can't directly attach goblin to fairy because then they'll break. And you can't directly attach fire to water because then they'll break. So you have to layer goblin, fire, fairy, water, and over time the item has this like Matryoshka doll effect of its effects changing as it's used, as the layers are expended.
Not dissimilar to Gillette's existence. And I just think it's like a really powerful space because like you don't need to lock down a supply of abyssal energy or path stuff
Or like
or
take the time as a manifold gardener to be the lord of a space so that you can work with
Exactly.
all of its realms.
Yeah, it's a discount manifold gardener, a discount collector, but also broader than any of them. It's just like, oh yeah, I can start with like some junk in my backyard, tinker around for a little bit, and then I've got like a moderately powerful sort of, even if it's single use, but like you can put together stuff to achieve a specific effect. And I think that'd be a lot of
combo
fun.
mage.
Exactly.
I like that.
And then I meet a spider breather or a yellow shaman, and I'm like, oh, man, I don't know how you function. How do you the variety? Some days I just feel red, you know?
Well, the trick is that I just paint all of the things that I want to try out yellow so that they fit within my category. And then I can become a yellow sorceress by just having painted abyss, fairy, goblin, all yellow.
So my category is all of the things.
Spider breathing is ridiculous. How does that exist? I don't understand.
You know, there's jokes where it's like, who was the first person who tried milk?
Yeah, I suppose.
It's a classic Aussie practice. You know how spiders just crawl into your lungs at a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do when a huntsman spider is just in your like next to you on your pillow? Like, you eat it, right? Like, there's no
slurp him up.
You gotta act quickly.
Because if they stretch their legs out, then they get stuck, and then your mouth gets stuck around it. It's just such a nightmare. You got to get in there real quick. Just breathe it right in.
Yeah.
How else am I going to get a handle on all the bugs that are in my lungs? Like, it's just
yeah.
Like, I swallowed a fly.
No better.
Obviously.
Obviously, you then got to swallow a wasp. Then like got to get a spider to deal with the wasp. It's not complicated. It's like we have like those. I think we have the top of the top 25. We have 19 of the most venomous snakes. And I think it's just a natural response to knowing that that's the situation you're in, to just gobble them up, you know?
Yeah, eat them first. My sister, actually, this was, I think, she bought a bunch of cat toys from an American site. So, like, all of because she wanted the specific one that came in a bundle. So she got all these cat toys from America. And one of them is just, it's a snake, and it's motorized, so it kind of slithers around and encourages the cats to like play with this snake.
Mm.
And she turned it on. She played. I was like, I don't think this is a good idea in this country to have that toy. Like
that's maybe not
encouraged. That is a bad lesson. It's like how they cut episodes of Peppa Pig because they were like, spiders aren't dangerous, and that's a lie.
yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't think we should use this toy in Australia. Like, pack that one away.
Yeah, and I mean, you do have the special interest groups like all of the snake pisser shamans, you know.
But like, that's so specialized, you know.
It's a very very niche market.
Now, Reuben, can I take a guess what your answer to this question would be? Because it's the first time we've asked it.
I don't know.
I feel like you're always so enamored with city magic. I feel
that's probably what it would be. In fairness, I do fucking love city magic.
Would it be city magic of Sydney?
Talk to the good old Victoria building.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sydney.
Does Sydney have enough
culture?
Yeah. I guess that's what I was going to say.
There was that discussion question. I remember throwing a couple ones your way.
Yeah.
That was mostly dunking on how shit North and East Sydney are.
But like, it was easy.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, maybe Sydney. It would definitely be city magic. I guess if I had to pick, I would settle for Sydney.
You get a really iconic city glyph of the opera house into the bridge, so you'd be able to draw it from scratch.
And before you sneakily move on, Elliot.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, mine's easy. I would just sort of be nothing as fancy as either of you two. I'm just going to be some kind of collector, I think. Like, that's why I played a collector in Pace. It's the one practice that I sort of read, and I was like, I can see myself doing that.
See, I was so sure you were going to say something like water elementalist or something.
I'm
No,
surprised you
I
didn't
mean-
say bird shaman.
I've already got all the bird skills I need.
All right, the familiar covers it.
No, but the anecdote that makes me think this is like, my mom loves to tell the story of how when I was a kid, I would often just like sort and order my toys rather than play with them. Like me and my sisters had all these toys, and like when they got messy, I would just enjoy organizing them. And that's still kind of true today with like stuff that I own. And I just like that just feels like collector speaks to that part of me.
Elliot, when was the last time you reorganized your amiibos?
Ages ago, a couple of months.
Oh, I'm surprised.
But
Well,
that's
now's
because I
the
got it right. I nailed it.
Oh, okay. It's been solved.
Got it in one.
The collection is complete.
Yeah, I think I will have to reorganize. It's fine. Let's not talk about this. There is actually a reorganization of some coming up, but I won't bore everyone with
One of
Yikes.
the stories that we wrote on Omo with my regular group was about basically just mugging a collector family, and there was one of the kids of the collector family collected figurines, and so she had this like go everything from like a statuette of a goddess that never existed to like a really well loved Warhammer 40k like orc, and they all just provided these passive like cantrip level effects. So if you ever like want to set up your amiibo collection so that you can like summon Link's bomb or whatever,
Exactly. Cool. Well, I guess we should get on to one of the final parts we've got here, which is just where we discuss the definition of the arc title.
Yeah.
And how it might link to the arc. So obviously, hard pass is an interesting one because more so than any of the other idiom arc titles we've had in this story, this one has a bunch of definitions. So I think we'll just go through kind of definition by definition, and people can just jump in with what they think it has to do with the arc. So like the first definition of hard pass, which is probably the one most people think of, is just like the unequivocal rejection with no possibility of later change of mind. So when you just say hard pass on something.
and that does match Lucy's final warning to the Victorians. Like this is the final warning, no holds barred. We're going to like hand you dull parts in a black sludge as an intimidation factor, unless and if you don't leave, this will be the very last of it.
And Liz and the hard pass on her offer of neutrality.
Yeah, I also think the no possibility of later change of mind makes me think of Charles. Like we had that great moment halfway. Oh no, it was in 22.z, I think. So right at the end of the arc, where like Charles is really upset that Avery has died, so he sits in this cabin that he doesn't like, and the cabin is like warping and stretching because he hates it, and he literally thinks to himself, "But I can't think of anything else to build instead." And it was just such a blatant metaphor for this system he's created for himself.
The sort of metaphor that reaches through the screen and punches you in the nose.
Yeah, like I almost hesitate to call it a metaphor because that implies some sort of layer of symbolism that isn't so direct.
I mean, like that's one of Wildbow's great strengths, that you get those very direct explanations of what you should be taking away from this, or very literal versions of something more metaphorical, and it doesn't feel forced.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly, and that's like it just that that idea, no possibility of later change of mind, just makes me think of the way Charles has stuck himself in this hellscape of his own creation,
and not to mention Gashward's unequivocal rejection of the forest squirrels,
along with his unequivocal rejection of being turned into his weapon form.
That's gonna happen, one day. So there's also the sports definition of a hard pass, which is just a pass to another player that's really forceful. It's a pass that is hard.
Classic.
Gosh, I
and
wonder
obviously
who that could have been.
You I mean, the fact that this definition opens with "in sports" kind of tells you what ties we're going to draw here.
It's obviously a reference to Verona.
I did like when Avery sort of first reappears, and actually no, never mind. I think this is something that happened in 23.1. I will not talk on it.
Oh, I was just about to make that same point.
There is that she defeated Marachika using the jounce, which is a ball, so therefore it was a particularly hard pass.
Well, she made Marisica hard pass the abyssal nail at her.
Yeah, getting a nail thrown at you via magnet is a pretty hard pass.
Maybe the hardest pass you can make.
Yeah, Avery also, it was a bit of a hard pass to throw at Lucy and Verona to function while thinking she's dead. I mean, admittedly, she'd been shot, so in terms of options, she was fairly
the
limited,
hardest of passes, getting past a bullet.
Yeah, but then to go from getting a bullet yourself to then just kind of leaving it to the other two to cope while you're and not intentionally not let Snowdrop let the other two know that you're alive. Yeah, pretty hard pass. This one I really liked. There is a dated definition of hard pass, which is a difficult time in one's life, typically related to financial difficulties.
That seems like a pretty direct connection to them running low on power.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And also Charles.
I really like the contrast, though, in that, so much of this arc was Lucy and Verona thinking to themselves, wow, we are so low on power. And then we get that snippet of Charles in 22.Z, and he's like, I think it's he shows up and the Alabaster's like, wait, you didn't even realize that you're gainsaid? He's so far in debt that, he's so weak to begin with. He didn't even realize he was gainsaid. So it's there's a funny parallel. The Kennetiers, this was really a hard pass for them. They were weak and they noticed it, whereas Charles is just in it for the long haul. He's a battler. He's a struggler. That's what we love about him.
He wouldn't have been able to notice that he didn't have any power to spare because he couldn't actually make anything. Because he was just like shaking his cottage, going, "Why aren't you a better world?"
There's also a definition. So a hard pass is a permanent pass to enter the West Wing of the White House.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a cool meaning.
Yeah. So, and obviously that ties into this arc in just a bunch of ways that I don't even think we need to say because they're so obvious, and I get them.
We'd hate to retread obvious ground.
For sure.
I don't want to condescend the audience like that,
Not just be rude.
Yeah, I don't know. It's to do with Helen, obviously. Now, next definition.
A time passes where the remaining duo are hardened. Now, this one's a bit of a stretch, right? But there was such an emphasis on Lucy and Verona resolving to when in the chapter where they said no, we should go for the throat, and they said let's storm Mariska's church directly, and they went hard.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I don't think Wildbow limits his emphasis of these words to just the total, the total of the idiom. The word hard and pass on an individual level are for sure relevant.
And Avery passed out hard.
Imagine being so, it's almost on the same level as Biscuit's disappearing drink, where you
oh yeah,
the cops can walk in and you just pop out of some drywall a couple hours later once they're all gone. She passed out so hard that the world thought she was dead.
Well,
there are good odds that this was the world record for the most passed out anyone's ever been. The page was actually there for the first few hours because she set a new record for the most passed out anyone's ever been.
Biscuit's sitting here, hold my beer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Biscuit's taking notes. That's actually 23.2 is just going to be Biscuit's follow-up interview with Avery where she's kind of trying to learn how to replicate this.
And
using the resulting alchemical material then our final dot point.
Yes. to paraphrase what somebody has written here, because I noticed that this was not color coded. Yeah, obviously you could hard pass a particularly difficult fecal movement.
Brilliant.
That would be a hard
Yeah,
pass.
passing it was quite difficult, I imagine. Yeah, with all that potion misuse.
I think that's common
Misuse
vernacular.
is such a strange term here. Like
Yeah.
they paid the barista. Like she came all that way out to the event that was the end of the world. She provided like a few more standard drinks than maybe Avery should have had, but she gave it a fair go. And I think all up it's really potion adventurous potion applications.
Yeah, I mean, I do genuinely think it's going to be not the potion so much directly, but like a big thing for the first half of Arc 23 at least is going to have to be like, with maybe Lucy accepted, all three of the Kennetys were so at the end of their rope by the end of this church scene. Like, I have to assume that they need some R&R even more than someone like Marisica right now. Like, they were like, the last time we saw in Verona's head, she was half dead. And she was basically using engine head because she'd run out of
just
self-despair.
sculled direct gasoline like I've always wanted to.
Yeah.
Living the dream.
I'm really curious what, because Avery. Oh, actually, no. Damn it. That's go for the throw to start.
That's spoilers. Hard to avoid them.
Yeah, but yeah, like and you know, like obviously, yeah, Avery, I assume is still dealing with a lot of bullet wound related problems in her life. So yeah, gonna be fascinating to kind of see how they try to recover.
It's times like these that I'm actively glad that I did not write up the tissue witch of the porta potty spellbook for the spellbook contest, because like I tried to figure out how gunk would be discovered from first principles, like how goblins would come to use this strange material that's almost like glamour but is mostly just like shattered glass and dirt. And I came up with her, and I'm glad I haven't written that out, because then I would have to say, oh, that poo would be a really important alchemical component for her practice.
Oh, this recording's gone on too long. We're getting to that point.
Okay, last obligatory section then. It's time for the bold and specific predictions. So yeah. I guess we've got a note here that VV has to go first. So
legally speaking, I am required to go first. I will be very quick. I think that Rook is going to defeat and in order to like get back in good graces of the rest of the team, she's going to be the one to defeat Helen. Like we discussed earlier, I'm not sure about the exact specifics because Helen's really weird, but it does make sense to me on a thematic level that Rook would be the one to defeat her. And then what's going to happen is that Rook will be like standing over like Helen's like mess of a horrifying over body that has been pulled out of the extra dimensional space and into Kennet, and she'll be looking all triumphant. And then a judge will appear and say, "How dare you kill the woman that destroyed Brett's house?" and then Rook will be just evaporated by the alabaster.
What a fun moment that will be when that happens.
Yeah, I am just so genuinely curious to see where Rook ends up. I didn't get in before when we were talking about Rook, but like a bird, I think it was talking earlier about like there's the stuff Rook has been saying about how she's really ticked off about what happened to Miss, and like you're right. Obviously, you know, we've seen Rook very prominently lean into a bias we know she has to mislead us from what side she's on. Like, she loved to remind us how much she hated practitioners when she was secretly on the Kennetier's side because of Miss. So like, while it's not indicative of what side she's on, that she's really mad about this stuff going on with Miss, I do think it's probably true that, like, even if she is still on Team Goodies and she's going to betray the culprits soon, there's something to be said for how much she isn't aligned with Kennet. Like, she's very much going against her instincts if she is on their side to side with them. So it's like, either way, I think it's going to be really interesting to see where Rook ends up.
Yeah.
Speaking of, mine's going to be a pretty big one because I'm riding high on the burn down house prediction, and so I'm going to shoot for a trifecta, the hat trick. So firstly, I agree, Rook has always been on side. She's been playing the field the whole time, but not even she knows the climactic power of friendship moment the trio will pull off. She just trusts them to do the right thing, and that's really important because it's Rook specifically trusting 3 practitioners. Right, and then the second prediction will be that the trio will actually be beaten in the final confrontation through some Kentucky Fried bullshit, and they'll fight their way through the antagonists, and they'll like come to the end of their rope. They'll run out of the power they've got, but they will survive, and then the greater community will come together to help them get the, if not a literal win, then the moral win, or the catharsis we're looking for. We prove that Kennet was worth fighting for all along. And thirdly, the form that win will take will specifically be binding violence itself in the whole province through the peaceful connections spread around the entire judgeship and beyond. And they'll use that binding to lock down the Carmine Throne entirely.
There are some very cool parts to that, but I wonder how... Will the Blood Moon be okay if there's no violence allowed?
But it's not that there's no violence; it's that the violence is contained. There's still like violent practitioners, but they are absorbed into the 4-yearly sword moot, and there is the monopoly on violence. And like it's in hand, and it won't just be practitioners. There were also others in that sword moot, and so that also means that others will crack down on sort of the loose cannon others that are the dangerous to anyone and everything, because that is the sort of thing that would undermine their like place in the sword moot. It's like, if you can't control your own backyard sort of thing, which is all colonial bullshit, but like they're still going to operate in the system that they are in. Like, they're not going to overthrow the seal. They've been very clear about the fact that even if every practitioner in Canada all worked together to overthrow the seal, they couldn't.
This is just Seal 2.0. It really follows all of the foreshadowing the story has provided us. I think this is possibly the most accurate theory we've ever heard.
Sorry, an interesting like line of thought that I I'm just thinking for the first time in a while. Like, so, well, I guess along the lines of we can't beat the seal. Like, a pretty big part of that is when Mossa started doing all his lordships. There was a lot of talk about how like we can't really revert those. Like, those lordships are a done deal, and we've seen Charles do stuff to kind of get around that by instilling his own lords and cutting deals with them. But like, assuming we beat the culprits and kind of get rid of most of those lords, because I think it's the general consensus is they seem kind of like they're assholes. An interesting aspect to rebuilding after the fact is that there's still going to be all these lordships, and so there's going to need to be a bunch of lords. And I wonder how that plays into some of the end game stuff you're talking about. Like, if we're talking about binding violence, those lordships are going to be a huge piece of how you do that, surely.
Why not? Let's throw in a fourth prediction then. I think that the Negatiers, the St. Victor's practitioners will be crucial for that, because they've gone out and formed particular relationships with the lords. Those lords have to interact with them, and a good portion of them have decided to stand down and be on side, even after the point where they couldn't stand down and no longer practice and no longer have oaths bound to them. So I think that the Kennetiers could use the Negateers to sort of bind the lords, but not in the traditional practitioner sense, but bind them in the sense of getting them to work with everyone, and maybe like some of them need to have a violence done to them or be isolated or rooked into pieces or whatever. But
Violent.
yeah, but the violence specifically for this prophecy to work needs to be bound by community.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I guess that brings us more or less to the end of things. I think we've got a quick Backed to Pact lined up, but we'll do the outro first for those of you who have not yet indulged in Pact, which maybe use this time to go
do that. Yep, for sure.
Long overdue at this point.
It's his shortest serial. He's just quickly banging out on a weekend, you know?
Yeah,
if you've made it this far in Pale, you are very capable of reading Pact. I think we're approaching 3 or 4 times the length of Pact. Anyway, yeah. So thanks, Bird and viceVersailes for joining us.
Happy to.
I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
It's been great having you both on.
Yeah.
Hang on, I've got my Australian slang booklet open.
All right.
Oh no, these ones are really quite. I've never heard these ones before. You ever heard someone say ace?
Ace,
as an excellent.
I feel like I've maybe heard that before.
I reckon I heard that on like what was it, Lockie Leonard or something, like some shit from like the 80s.
The only time I've ever heard someone like describe someone as ace without
Yes.
like that asexual definition was in a very similar sort of magic system with binding demons in the Bartimaeus trilogy, where one of the demons was bound to come up with a new grand title to someone who beat him in a fight, and like the grand titles eventually started running out, and they ran out of ideas, and it's like, oh, Ace one, just absolute top fella.
A real flaming galah.
She was pretty alright.
But yes, thank you both for coming on. If
Had to
you all
christen this Australian episode.
If you all enjoyed this show, then why don't you check out some more from us on our Twitter @PowerEffectCast, where we post a fresh new meme each and every single day.
Yep. And if you're not seeing them, that's your fault.
Yeah, adjust your settings.
There's a website, doofmedia.com, that exists, and on that website are details about the various doof shows that are going on. Shout out to the Doofcast, which I think they're nearing the end of their deep dive into all the Ridley Scott movies, which
they have
is
to
just
be by
such
now, right?
You would think.
the thing about Ridley Scott, though, is that he's got like, for every absolute banger he's got, he seems to have just a piece of shit to go with it. So yeah, that's been a particularly fun director to dive in, I think, through that lens. But yeah,
Balance in all
check
things.
it out.
Yeah. If you want if you want to support the Doof Media Network, you can go to patreon.com/doofmedia and become a patron. Patrons are what make the network work as a network. So go and do that if you want to help make that happen.
Good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget to stop by Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow. He's we're not meant to talk about it, but he publishes secret chapters on that Patreon. And you know,
and they're filled with all your favorite characters from the fanfics doing exactly what you want them to do. Sorry, that sounded weird. I mean, like,
what is on there, of course, is Gashwad 2, Squirrel Vengeance, and of course, Tashlet's Marvelous Adventure.
The annotated edition of 100 Years Lost.
Oh yes, thank goodness for that.
Crucial resource.
Yeah, Wobbo's actually just told us about all the Pisces stuff in the Patreon. You just didn't hear about it if you're not a patron.
Yeah.
And look, you probably think we're joking, and you're probably right, but isn't there that tiny shred of a doubt in you that we might be telling the truth?
Don't you want to just check, just to be sure?
Yeah, it seems worth checking.
Think how much the Garricks would pay for that chance.
Cool. And so with that, we'll see you all later. Unless you have
Or-
read Pact, in
yeah.
which case we'll go back to Pact.
Let's go back. Okay, we're here. That was, of course, the ceremonial back to pact music. Welcome, everyone.
I was expecting bells.
We had to go around the twist.
Yeah, so obviously I feel like the opening thing, the sort of obligatory back to Pact thing we got to discuss is obviously we just had a protagonist pretend to be dead for an arc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, was Blake pretending?
Yeah. Again, just like Avery, he got a bit injured and then he got better.
Yeah. Chuck Desicky. Nothing more classically Australian than that.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of connection shenanigans is all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, just like Avery, like it was basically the same thing.
like Blake basically just took a trip down to the Abyssal Bottle-O. Like got like filled up like on some like good old Corona, and went back upstairs. It wasn't complicated.
Just keening for a dart, you know.
These are some classic Australianisms here.
But yeah, no, I think I did think it was really interesting seeing how Pale did do a very different version of "Is the protagonist dead?" question mark. First of all, I think Pact lent more into trying to make you just believe that Blake was dead, whereas Pale wanted you to trust. But also, I guess, like, yeah, like all throughout Pales, there was really a sense of like a huge focus on what effect this had on like Lucy and Verona, like because this is a story that doesn't just have one protagonist. We almost spent more of it discussing the effect that it had on Lucy and Verona, whereas like with Blake's death, we just kind of cut away to Mags and started.
We cut away to the girl on checkered scarf.
Yeah, well, yes, the girl soon to be known as Mags. And yeah, kind of lent into tricking us with a different story. And I liked this as, like, yeah, it didn't feel like we were treading old ground. It was fun to meme on the fact that we'd already been through this with Blake. But like, it certainly didn't feel like this was the same thing.
Avery certainly came out the other side much less corrupted by the realm that she was hiding out in. Yeah, that's we've got a couple of hints for it with the.
She's
light.
Oddly light.
Yeah,
she's might be losing track of time. She is like, but overall, no wings.
Yeah,
I
mean, I trust
edgy sword.
I trust the paths to help you grow into something better than the Abyss, right? Like, even if it's sort of the same. Even if it was like, yeah, she's going through the path equivalent of what Blake went through, I'd pick just about any realm over the Abyss to go through that with.
Especially if you've got more than half of yourself just like ripped open and just like exposed to whatever happens to be wandering around.
I think there is something to say of their similar relationship with glamour, and that Blake tried to use it to affirm himself, and that really did just accelerate the path into being obviously other for him. But Avery was using it only to ever mark the occasion of when she'd done something that she was proud of and wanted to be more herself. So I guess the real takeaway is that Avery's a pro and that Blake's a complete wuss that should have tried harder.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd credit Blake with affirming himself with glamour. It was more like patching grievous mortal wounds in himself by just plastering a bit of glamour over the top. Yeah, she'd be right. Oh, this one was pretty bad.
Real half a man effort. Yeah.
This one was real bad. We'll stick some wax in first. Poor Blake.
Poor Blake. I often, when telling people that they should read Pale, will end up mentioning Pact almost derisively, because so much of what I like about Pale is not in Pact. And I think maybe a good example of that is the next point we've got here, which is the role of the Abyss and Bogeymen in this arc of Pale as compared to their role in Pact overall, where like at the very beginning of Pale, the Abyss was like not on screen or not explained, and I think the first experience of it we get was the Bathos, and then there was the dog pig man, and then later the milkmaid, and just very little opportunity to look it directly in the eye. Meanwhile, I think the first sight of the Abyss we get in Pact. First of all, we hear about the bogeymen that just apparently the Thorbones just have a books of, and we have that moment when he's so vulnerable self-wise. I think after the fight with the initial like trouncing with the Behames, that he's like seeing between the spirit and between the Abyss, and being told not to go there. And then we have the final landing, like, oh, here we are in the drains. And I just think there's a substantially different dynamic where there's so much more hype given to the Abyss and Bogeyman in Pale. Like we don't ever really get to we get a taste, and we get more suspicion. I feel like someone that had no familiarity would have like had a lot of curiosity that would then be punctuated with horror, from Pale's slow sinking. But like it's only in the recent like last 4 or so arcs with Marachika that we've actually had the Abyss even on screen. And then I mean, what is there to say for its role in Pact? It's huge.
Well, I'd argue it's almost similar, because we didn't see a bunch of Abyss in Pact until the halfway mark, and we didn't see a bunch of Abyss in Pale until after summer break. So I think it's just that the halfway mark for Pale is like
it's 2 packs long.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's also, I think, Pale was originally meant to kind of sit beside Pact to a degree as like an entry point to this world. And part of what has happened, at least to how I view the stories, as Pale has just continued to get better as well as bigger. It doesn't feel like that to me anymore. Like, I think, for the first even 11 or 12 arcs of Pale, I would have said like, oh, it's kind of neat that these two sit side by side, and like Pale is better and kind of discussing more nuanced themes, but both kind of are looking at the same universe from different angles. Whereas as Pale's just kept going, it's just kind of been like, oh, in so many ways, like conceptually, thematically, it feels like Pale has encompassed everything Pact was talking about and like taken that to newer, more interesting places, I guess, in a lot of ways. So it's like something like the Abyss might have been intentionally getting held out of early Pale because the Abyss was so much in Pact that it didn't make sense to do it in Pale if they sit side by side. Whereas now the Pale is just kind of eclipsed Pact in so many ways. It's like, well, there's no reason to keep the Abyss off screen anymore because this is just a story that's evolved so far beyond that idea.
It's almost,
to me, that it sits beside Pact.
It's almost like there's Pact on one side as one half, and then the first half of Pale on the other side as the other half, and then the second half of Pale is sort of like the synthesis of the two, where like you see all the stuff that you saw in Pact, give or take, apocalyptic threats here, but like it's
I would almost say if somebody were to write on the subreddit at some point that they felt like you should read Pact before going into Arcs 14 and stuff of Pale, I don't think I'd completely disagree. Like, I don't know that I'd recommend somebody just stop Pale to read Pact in the middle after Arc 13, although that would be funny.
I actually really like that idea.
It's a good suggestion. It reminds me of like people being very insistent about watching Star Wars in the like correct order. And like you've got to go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. Otherwise, you're just not going to understand. Like I think even though it's not chronological, there is an argument to be made there that you can sample so much of what post summer break Pale is by dabbling a bit in Pact.
And also that means future readers can have a method, if they so choose, to feel the pain that we felt immediately after summer break.
Well, yeah. Like, it's a good substitute because, and I love talking about this because, Wildbow had initially considered full-on doing another serial in between arcs 13 and 14 of Pale. And part of me wishes we lived in the universe where he could have done that.
Like, I wouldn't have survived that universe, but it would have been worth it.
It would have been wild. I would have had to, you would have just taken a bow. It would have been incredible.
But yeah, so I love any ability you sort of have to recreate that. But yeah, and in my head, arc 14 is sort of where Pale just started to openly leave Pact behind. Like, I think that was when Wildbow really embraced that he, and I'm definitely I'm saying what I think he was thinking. So I could just be entirely off base, but like arc 14 feels like where we openly just started no longer pretending that Pale and Pact could sit side by side. Like, Pale has just gone so far beyond what Pact did in the best way. Like, I think a lot of Pale thematically still complements Pact, but it's just been doing it so deep now that it's like it doesn't feel like a sibling anymore. It feels like this bigger thing that sits around it.
I know that the who would win question is right there, but that was such a perfect segue to
of course,
to the one sort of idea that Pale isn't covering of Pact, which is the demons and the angels. Like they touched on angels a little bit, and
the abyssal angel.
Yeah, well, and also the actual angel that was summoned that Lucy, Lucy fought. And then also what's going on with the whole architect thing, where architect refers to the angels, and it also refers to the fixed points or the big names on the paths. And like paths and creation, I feel like are a very tight fit, and angels and creation are a very tight fit. And then the whole Page of Suns has got a very angelic vibe. So like there's a lot going on with the angels, but it feels like it's actively avoiding dealing with the angels in the same way as Pact did, and also just generally steering clear of demons.
Yeah, and I do think part of that is because like Wildbow, has many times I think gone on record as saying like angels and demons are not a common thing. Like I think Pact gives you the impression that demons and angels come up more often than they do. So I don't know if Pale is avoiding bringing them up so much as maybe better representing what Wildbow's vision for how often they are relevant is. Like it.
Yeah, John having said, this is the third demon-tainted thing that I've ever seen in my life. And I've traveled really far.
Like, I think having something like the Thorburns in your town is just a really, really big kind of just a very odd thing, and those things kind of attract each other. Like, we know Faisal was in town specifically to deal with Barbatorum. So it's like the fact that all those forces were together was more because one was there, but it's meant to be exceedingly rare.
Yeah, except that Wildbow keeps sort of taunting me in particular with this whole angel.
I know you two don't get along, but it's kind of unkind.
He keeps writing me as causing apocalypses in his story, and I just feel like that's very, very rude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we've had this discussion in DMs. I'm not sure I do think that the architects of the paths have much to do with angels as much as that nomenclature overlaps. I think the architects are very misnamed on the paths, but that's...
You can't tell me that Wildbow didn't know that was going to happen, though. Like, even if they aren't,
sure,
he's inviting that comparison.
And then also denying it by Verona saying, "Oh, we thought they might be angels, but actually they're not like polygonal enough. They're like the constructs being too simple to be angelic, not enough be not afraid mortals sort of vibe."
And then we haven't even touched on that alchemist dude and his alchemical angel constructions. Like he keeps just teasing us, just dangling it.
I think the alchemical angels, I reckon, was a perfect just like just little detail to throw in there just to make people like us go, wait, what the fuck? Like, and use up a lot of our mental bandwidth over kind of nothing. Because it is like, it kind of makes sense that somebody who believes you can alchemically create just about anything would try to go for angels, which are one of the most fundamental things. But like I just imagine pale readers who are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They're foundational or whatever. Whereas obviously, like those of us who've read Pact are like, what
do you mean
like,
you have viceVersailes?
yeah, why would you choose this? That guy was a dick.
This smells like dog piss.
But especially, I very much use a model for angels and demons that relates to them representing like truth and fact. And so the idea that you're trying to create these things artificially is actually a super interesting thing to explore, but it would kind of have to be a whole story on its own. So I like just using it as a very like, just like almost background detail, like a little bit of environmental storytelling.
If we're willing to tolerate Pisces level theorization, I have a pretty a durable guess for what I would say the architects are, but it's not really a back-to-back discussion.
Well, we're not going to go back to pale, so might as well throw it in now.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously go for it. Pisces theorizing is something I've dabbled in a lot, too much.
I mourn your sanity as I mourn mine. There's we've lost a lot of really good people to the riddle, and I know more of us are slipping as every day passes. But the problem is, I think I figured out something that works that has nothing to do with the questions that he provided. And it's durable enough that it's like resisting trying to make a different theory, but it doesn't answer any of the questions, which is part of why I think it might be true, because it isn't being scrutinized. But the Page of Suns outlines this dynamic with Avery, that what the paths are at the edge of reality are basically the things that have been neglected, not necessarily the things that aren't important, but the things that are beneath or above notice, like gods that are sleeping and have fallen into the paths, or like a dust mite, and those two extremes. And they may be valuable, they may not be, but that's Avery's personal adventure. And within that, I think there is a relatively durable idea that what the architects, the archetypes, the Page of Suns, child, wolf are things that, instead of being so small that you neglect them, things that are so big that you can't contain the idea and articulate it easily, or are like en masse neglected by people. So like end up like celestial objects drawing in through their the sheer gravity of the number of times these things are lost, ending up into these massive themes, these big connected like reoccurring characters. And it's most obvious with the child and the wolf, because every human adult has discarded some part of their childhood naivety and their flexibility. And the wolf is pretty obvious because people repress their trauma. It's very rare for someone to completely comprehend and understand why they were treated with malice or disrespect, and that just falls out of your head. The Page of Suns, it's a bit clunkier. The idea that there is someone who knows even when everyone else has forgotten, the idea that there is an elder that is better educated than you, or like a person with the answer to the riddle, is sort of an articulation of the fact that information is just being lost all the time to the throes of history. And then something to perhaps the Queen of Ends being like the heat death of the universe, like the true fact that there will be a time when things will no longer happen, and all the little ways that happens, all the little true endings, that no one can really wrap their head around, because you don't quite notice when things have happened for the last time. And
then we have a fish.
And then we have a fish, which is not great because it makes it really unclear what you would then use to symbolize. But I think from there, it makes sense to say that the reason that Avery that the reason that the Page of Suns was unhappy with Avery was because she looked at that and then emphasized the importance of humans. And really what this is more like is a process that creates this sort of human-esque portrait in our local sphere. So if you can imagine Pisces instead as a similar entity from an entirely different universe, the culmination of an entire part of the not human experience, the alien experience of another species. You can imagine this being like the fish version of like the wolf, the fish version of the child. And you can see how that is completely useless and unwieldy, and that is why I think it has nothing to do with the actual theory. But what I like about it is that it makes Jacques seem like a perfectly normal thing to be in the set, because if the finder is created from self-reflection, from like the parts of yourself you don't recognize, your untapped potential, and the child is your childhood, the wolf is trauma, then Jacques is just sort of the other people's lives that you don't come to understand, because he's described as just being perfectly normal as a person. And I really like that as being the humanity that gets dismissed, the humanity that is lost to the paths because people are overlooked, because people are dismissed, and it all coming together into one guy that you could just like get along with really well, and like your two paths cross, and it's this vibrant moment and you never see him again.
Just Davo from Out Whoop Whoop.
Yeah, Davo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel unable to comment on that too much without going into my own models for all this stuff, which would just be long and boring in this episode. It's already plenty long.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I don't want to lump some more boring on top of that. That was great to listen to.
Do we have?
Is why I'll force myself to limit my answer to.
I thank you for your patience. Who would win, My Watch Must Continue guy and Garden Sheila, or Defenestration Bogey and Blake?
Now that's a question.
You know what? I'm never going to bet against Blake. Like that man.
Yeah, I was
100%. Fighting the odds is what he do.
I'm never going to bet against Defenestration Bogey.
And especially because Garden Sheila, was she the one that she was up on top of a house and like announcing them and like with the traps and whatnot?
No,
yeah, she was standing up somewhere high.
Yeah, rookie error.
Big mistake. Because if you're on the ground, Defenestration Boogeyman is fucking pointless.
But if Defenestration Boogeyman can knock you off a high place down to where Blake is waiting, you're in trouble.
It's just an unbeatable team. I think this proves that Pact is better than Pale.
Charles, it's been a less obvious but consistent piece of Charles's characterization that he stringently avoids standing near windows because he knows.
I do think it's fun to consider, because I obviously, like, Pact talked so much about, you should always keep the fight alive. Like that was a big message of Pact is not to just give in to the system because beating it seems impossible. And then Pale has obviously been answering this exploring this next question of, okay, but how do we fight productively? And it's really funny to look at that because part of me flip-flops on what side of this conflict I think Blake might have been a part of. Like I can see a situation where, especially late story Blake when he was super abyssal, was very much aligned with Team Charles. In fact, if I had to pick someone who he probably would align the most with in this story, it would probably be Rook, because he kind of sits somewhere in the middle. But I think it's really funny that this story's baddies are people who I can kind of look at and see a little bit of Blake in.
Realistically, I think Blake would have died to the Mussa colonization of the thing. I think he wouldn't have been able to resist that fight, and I don't think he would have won that fight.
I follow the logic, but I think what would actually happen would be he'd be defeated Evan would be taken as a new Mercer familiar, and then Charles in his swoop would elevate Blake to one of the Carmine Lords. And that is the fanfic that I want to write now, actually.
I would read the shit out of that.
Yeah, Blake is one of Charles's lords. I could 100% see happening in like arc 14 or so, like where Malia and Jenny are at right now. I don't know. Actually, Blake very much did not want to be lord. That was one of his big things. But yeah,
and you were saying that you think he'd be on side with Charles. I cannot disagree more. I think the Undercity would have been a huge problem for him, like creating people to be exploited in a system that's sort of unbeatable and making them suffer for your own advantage. Like he would fight that tooth and nail.
True, but there are other aspects where I guess I don't feel like he would align. This is why I kind of like Rook is the one I feel like he'd probably get on with the most, because I do think he would have some problems with the way Kennet pulls punches sometimes. And I'm very much thinking, the Blake I have in my mind right now is the one that's from Pale in Comparison, so like arc 13, 14 Blake,
which is peak fuck shit up Blake.
Yeah, and this is the Blake I'm thinking of when I say I could see him maybe not being fully on the Kennetiers side. And while I agree he'd have his problems with like Charles and co, I don't know. I could see at different points in this story him being. I could see him helping the culprits in the first half, for example.
I could also see him specifically taking out Marisica as well.
Oh yeah.
Like
a lot of this would come down
Blake
to
Thorburn with a steel chair.
I mean, can you imagine? Fuck.
But could you imagine the story
Marisica.
if Blake was the one who stepped in to help the conspiracy instead of Marisica? Like Marisica came to fuck it up, and he's like,
that would be fun.
Hyena to the throat. Thank you very much.
I guess, yeah, less so. Like, I guess, like, when I think of Pact so much, I think of just that idea that like Granny Rose's whole plan was just to flip the table, and that feels very reminiscent of Charles's. So I guess but then Blake hated what Rose did to everything to a degree. So but yeah, it feels like Blake is the sort of maybe this is why Blake as the Lord feels so right. Blake as one of Charles's lords feels so right in a way, because those lords are equivalents to Blake in that they were others spun up for one of these dickheads wars, flipping the script.
Like he's definitely got that nothing left to lose desperation that Charles shares, but I think he also doesn't share that the Charles's issue that he had with his cabin, where he no longer can build things. I think Blake was always fighting for something, even if that something was at the end of the day, it wound up just being hope. That was all that was left to him. It's just hope, freedom, and a real gnarly attitude towards throwing himself bodily at danger.
And that is, of course, why he appeared in Pale as the effing bird.
That bird was described as beautiful.
He got a glow up.
Well, that's not Blake then. He was a mangy piece of shit in the epilogue from memory.
He was the bird after the cat had eaten it and vomited it up and dragged it in.
Which, I mean, more or less.
Not inaccurate. And speaking of that, if we're accepting that this might be the end of Pale, and we've got all of the concentrated conspirators all in their sort of their height, crashing down from their height of power, and then compare that to Baba Harness at in the North End Tower and preparing to storm that. They're similar, but it does feel very different, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, especially because the final villain of Pact ended up being Baba Harness with Faisal in his grip, which was this fun, it was one enemy who was a combination of the three big forces the story had been playing with. That story was very much about angels, demons, and humans. So we kind of got a hybrid of the three to finish it off, but it was still one enemy.
One
Whereas
entity.
What's fun is this has been a story about community. So what we've got is a group of enemies kind of gathering together.
Yeah, and the enemies in Pact were very much like power itself. Like he was the North End sorcerer, and then I'm still pretty convinced that the Barber wasn't just a moderate demon by the end of Pact. I think he was, at the very least, on his way to becoming a noble demon. In that, if he had have locked down that area, but that's an aside. But he was definitely powerful, and Faisal was definitely powerful, and Blake was like, "Fuck you, I'll fight you anyway because you're a prick."
Yeah.
And whereas I don't think the core traits of the conspirators is necessarily power. I think it's more like the desperation, and so they're sort of closer again, like closer to Blake in that equation, where like they have nothing but the fight. They cannot give up the fight, and so they just keep fighting. And they happen to be in power an arc or two ago, and now they're decidedly less so, but still up for a scrap. And I'm just wondering how the Kennetiers rise to that occasion.
Well, it feels a bit more hopeful for one.
Yeah,
which is
that's true.
Because I
less
often
grim.
call Pact the most hopeful of Wildbow's works in the end.
I think until Pale. I've had that vibe.
Until Pale, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully, speaking of being hopeful, it is I mean, if this is the final arc, who knows? Oh, the end of the story, not the final arc. I don't think we get into some really exciting, hopeful, optimistic endings for our main characters. And speaking of endings, does anyone else have anything else to say? That's my segue.
I was just thinking, you know what would be a fun epilogue for Snowdrop? It's just an extra material. She doesn't get an epilogue that's a whole bunch of words. It's just a picture of an opossum just fucking covered in strawberry milk, like gut bulging because it's full of absolute garbage food like French fries and stuff. And that's just her epilogue. We don't need words, just a picture that tells 1,000 words, which is this opossum just fucking gluttoning out.
She's happy, she's happy, she's happy, she's happy.
Yeah.
Now that's an ending we can look forward to. I heard there's a nice burger place near the lake.
Fugly Bob's.
Yeah, head there today. All right. Well, we already did our intro, so I guess that's it.
That's it.
That's that.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I mean, outro.